Chapter 216. However, some parts of his data didn't make sense to them, especially when his bloodline information was displayed. According to the data, Gustav had a B-grade bloodline. This meant that his bloodline potential shouldn't be above B+, or at most A. Even A was considered rare if you had a B-grade bloodline. However, at this moment, they saw that his bloodline potential was given the grade S. Only mixed bloods with grade bloodlines could have this. Also, it was very rare because only 1 out of 100 mixed bloods with the grades were blessed with this potential. It didn't make sense that a B grade had an S grade potential. On a side note, they felt his strength was probably attributed to this, and his bloodline must be a unique one. Dash, he's definitely going to become special class. I must make friends with him. Dash, how come his abilities cannot be computed completely? Dash, this guy is on another level compared to us. Dash, he's just a step 3 Zulu rank, but the strength he displayed must have surpassed the serial rank. How? Dash, does this mean he can defeat other special class candidates, since he has the highest scores? While everyone was checking out Gustav's information, Gustav was checking out Angie's. Candidate 00121, full name, Angie Villandrobadia, age 17, height 57, weight 49 kilograms, assessment data, endurance 9, 5, strength 7, 8, combat capability 9, 5, attack power 9, 8, speed 10, mental capacity 8, 8, reasoning aptitude 8, 5, bloodline information, bloodline potential A, bloodline grade, bloodline rank, second step Zulu, bloodline ability, speed, amplification, and discharge kinetic force. She really went at it. Gustav smiled after seeing her assessment score. Although Angie wasn't getting as much recognition as Gustav right now, the participants had to admit that she was among the most powerful here too. The walls around Gustav and Angie descended, and they were asked to return to their seats. The supervisors stared at both of them from their sitting position while having a conversation with each other. Has the score been submitted? Gradier Zanatus inquired. Yes, the higher-ups should be reviewing it by now. Still, I don't think they'll give us feedback till after the last test phase. Supervisor Valgus replied from the left while rubbing her blue facial hairs. Which means he still has to participate in the last phase. Supervisor Chucks stated from the last seat on the left as his worm-like hairs wriggled above his head. But he isn't the only one with the potential to become a special class, Supervisor Gondragas said with a deep tone. He didn't believe that any candidate with the potential to be a special class would come out of this batch. Nonetheless, he now acknowledged the fact that Gustav might be more special than even the rest of the other special class candidates. The others are too. But since the AI didn't react to them like they did him, they will just have to try becoming a special class candidate the usual way, Supervisor Chucks replied. He will still be questioned by the higher-ups later on his sudden improvement. So much potential. They are bound to be attracted to him, Gradier Zanatus said with a small sigh escaping from his lips. Why do I feel like there is still more to uncover about this young man? Supervisor Airy, the second female supervisor, muttered. Gustav and Angie had returned to their seats after completing the subphases. They received attention from everyone around them, even though other participants were currently undergoing the test subphases. Glade and the others were intimidated by Gustav's presence, but he wasn't even bothered. He ignored everyone as usual. Maltida, who was seated on his left, was feeling very excited at the moment. I was right to stick by his side. I need to gain his trust, she said internally, with his help in the future. Maybe I can finally change my fate. All around the city, Gustav had suddenly gained popularity and became the topic of discussion everywhere. The people that were shocked the most were the ones that used to know Gustav from school and his parents' neighborhood. Wasn't he F grade? Why is his last name no longer Oslov, but Crimson? They all had thoughts similar on this. As time passed, participants completed their subphases one after the other. Even though lots of them performed well, no one was really excited to watch them after seeing Gustav's performance. They would always try to compare anyone that appeared on that floor to Gustav. Gustav was receiving both admiration and envy. The same Gustav was currently not even paying attention to anything around him. He stared at the system notification in front of him. Hidden quest completed, goal completed, become a city-wide known figure. As Gustav stared at these notifications, his mind went back to a few weeks ago. Bam, 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 bam. The sounds of beating echoed in the vicinity as a full-grown man was being struck down by a 56-tall silhouette repeatedly. Blurg. Why? Oh. You. He vomited blood as he tried, crawling backward while pointing at the silhouette. The silhouette reached out his hand and grabbed onto the finger. Before the man could react, a loud cracking sound echoed in the vicinity, and he noticed his finger had been bent to the back. Arf! He screamed out in pain while retracting his finger as he kept shifting his body backward on the ground. W. Hi R-Y. Oh, you do. ING this. He asked with a teary and bloodied face. Are you seriously asking me that right now? The silhouette voiced out while moving closer to the man, who kept shifting backward. FLRRWWHHH. He got to the edge as his body pushed a stone backward, and it ended up falling from the height they were currently positioned on. Kairar. The man screamed out again in fear as he looked behind him. His body was close to falling off a cliff. He could see the bottom of the mountain, which was more than 1,000 feet away. This was when he realized that they were on a mountain top. The setting sun shone its light on this part of the mountain before going down completely. However, in that few seconds, when its bright light dyed the cliff area of this particular mountain, a devilish smile could be seen on the face of the person standing in front of the terrified man. This is for Boss Danzo, he muttered while reaching out to grab the man again. Chapter 217. However, in that few seconds, when its bright light dyed the cliff area of this particular mountain, a devilish smile could be seen on the face of the person standing in front of the terrified man. This is for Boss Danzo, he muttered while reaching out to grab the man again. Bam, 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 bam. Sounds of beating resounded across the vicinity. The man being beaten up was none other than Eben, the same person who caused the kitchen accident. Few hours ago, Gustav visited the laboratory in the form of the persona he had been making use of. After selling off the corpse of the mixed breeds he killed recently, he sneakily found his way to Eben's office. He assaulted Eben the instant he got in and fed him the sleeping drug he prepared down. Gustav held Eben down till the drug took effect and wrapped him in a cover cloth he prepared. He placed Eben's unconscious body on his shoulder and jumped out of the building through the window. After successfully abducting him, Gustav took Eben to the mountain area he tried committing suicide from in the past. Although the mountain had practically been halved since the incident with the system, it still had a remarkable height. Anyone who fell from the top would definitely have their body turned into meat, paste upon making contact with the ground. By the time Eben opened his eyes, Gustav's cold face was what greeted him. Gustav was squatting right in front of him with their faces a few inches from each other. Did you enjoy the nap? This was Gustav's first question to him. WH. Eben voiced out while moving backwards in fright. This might be your very last nap, depending on how you answer the questions I ask you. Gustav stated while moving close to him again. What do you mean? Wait, it's you. Eben muttered with a look of realization while pointing at Gustav. Before I start my questions, Gustav ignored Eben's words while saying, Did you think you could just get away with what you did and there wouldn't be consequences? Gustav's face suddenly turned colder as he reached out to grab Eben by the neck. Gerhuckle. Eben choked on his words as he felt Gustav's strong grip on his neck. Bah, SSDT, tard, DIM. Tidiel. His words turned muffled as the tightness of Gustav's grip increased on his neck. He felt he would be stronger and grabbed onto Gustav's hand to remove it from his neck, but no matter how much he tried, it was useless. BOM, BOM, BOM. He pummeled Gustav's arm with his fist, but even with it there was no reaction. Tears and snot had already filled his face, and his vision was starting to darken. He stared at Gustav's face, which was brimming with coldness. He could sense the murderous intent exuding from his being. He's truly going to kill me? I'm going to die in the hands of a kid? This thought plagued his mind, and just as his vision was about to darken completely, Gustav released his grip. Cough! Cough! Eben held onto his neck while coughing profusely and spitting out the saliva that was clogged in his throat. Oh, my bad. I got carried away, Gustav muttered while standing up. Now where was I? Gustav asked while staring down at Eben. Yo. You. Ho. W. Or Y. Oh, you trying to kill a mixed blood? The MBO will come for you. Eben managed to voice this out while raising his head to stare at Gustav. The moment he raised his head to meet Gustav's cold eyes that were staring back at him, he flinched. Before I start my questions, Gustav clenched his fists, causing his knuckles to make cracking sounds. This kid. He might be young, but I stand no chance against him. Eben's face shone a frightened look, and he wanted to get up, but the next thing he knew a leg had appeared in his front. Swoon! Bam! Gustav's right foot accurately slammed into the middle of Eben's face. Arr! He screamed out as his body was sent flying a few feet back. He still hadn't gotten a sense of his surroundings when Gustav dashed forward, grabbed him, and started raining slaps on his face. Pa! 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 Eben was like a defenseless little chicken in the hands of Gustav, who kept raining mighty slaps on his cheek, causing it to bloat in a matter of seconds with blood spilling out of them. Ah, see what you did. My hands are all messed up with your filthy blood now, Gustav muttered as he let go of Eben, who fell face flat to the ground. Blood dripped from Eben's mouth and face as he hit the ground. Gustav stared at his right hand, which was currently bloody, and squatted. He rubbed his hand on Eben's previously white laboratory coat, cleaning off the blood before grabbing onto him again. Now, let's try another part of your body that wouldn't mess up my hand, Gustav stated before throwing out his fist towards Eben's stomach. Bam! Blurg! Eben spat out a mouthful of blood as his body rolled back. Gustav dashed out again and grabbed him. Bam! 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 He started raining punches on Eben's body. This occurrence led to the current scenario. Eben was unable to run when he figured that they were on a mountain top. He couldn't go backward since he would fall off, neither could he move sideways or forward since Gustav would catch him. He had no choice but to receive the beating being fed to him by Gustav. Gustav beat Eben up repeatedly and fed him recovery pills just to beat him into a pulp again. It took everything in him not to kill Eben because at the moment he was extremely incensed. He knew killing Eben wouldn't bring him any gains since he still needed for him to confess about everything that had happened. This would also give him the evidence needed to deal with the 4 teachers from the disciplinary committee. Chapter 218. However, Gustav had something way worse in mind for the 4. He decided that after getting the evidence he needs, he would put that plan into motion. Bam! 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 PLE, ASEO, you have an EV, and Blurg, as, can any question, tie-ins yet? Eben pleaded while vomiting out more blood. I'll ask when I'm ready. For now, take the beating like a champ. It's your reward for doing such a great job of killing innocent people. Gustav smiled like a psycho as he approached Eben again. Da. Mon SP. Armi Arf. Eben screamed out again as Gustav grabbed his arm and twisted it at an unimaginable angle. Screams kept ringing out, and in a few seconds, all of Eben's limbs had been broken. After several more rounds of beating and suffering for Eben, Gustav stopped. Eben's face at this time looked listless, He had almost lost his mind from receiving unimaginable pain. He stared at Gustav with a look of fear and panic. "Now, tell me everything," Gustav voiced out while squatting in front of Eben. Eben, who was already traumatized by the pain he received earlier, started spilling everything about how he was approached by Mr. Lon, how everything was planned by them. After spilling out everything, Gustav got a system notification. Goal completed: abduct, torture, and successfully break a mixed blood back in the stadium-like arena. Gustav decided to check his rewards from completing the hidden quest and goal after taking a trip down memory lane. "I hope the goal rewards are as good as back then," Gustav said internally while checking them out. Hidden quest completed. Achieve the highest assessment score. Rewards +1 all attribute stats. God Eyes level up. +50 credits. Plus 20,000 EXP. These rewards are not bad, Gustav said internally after checking out that of the hidden quest. He decided to check out the upgrade God Eyes got first. Gustav opened the system interface and proceeded to check out his skills and abilities. Skills and abilities: dash, level 6 sprint, level 5 regeneration, level 4 shapeshifting, level 3 joint movement, level 3 toxin immunity, level 3 recreation, level 3 bloodline acquisition, level 3 slash, level 4 chop, level 7 palm strike, level 5 God Eyes. Level 3 God Eyes had gone from level 2 to 3. Gustav decided to check out the improvements. God Eyes. Level 3 abilities: 3,000-foot eyesight zoom in, visualize life signs, read internal energy, see through anything 3 inches thick and below. Track life signs, see-through ability has improved. Track life signs. Gustav had a contemplative expression on his face as he got to this part. The issue of life signs was something Gustav had been investigating since when he got God Eyes ability. Unfortunately, he always hit a brick wall after every research. These life signs were something every living thing that existed on the face of the planet had. Gustav always saw it on living things whenever he activated God Eyes. Regardless of that, till today, he couldn't figure out the functionality. The life sign on every human / Slarkov / mixed blood was always on the forehead. Gustav once asked Miss Amy if she knew what life signs were, but her reaction to his question was something Gustav never expected. Wherever you heard that from, and whatever you know about it, forget them all and never mention those words to anyone. Miss Amy forbade him from speaking, asking, or researching about it. This made Gustav feel extremely suspicious. Even when he promised Miss Amy that he would forget about it, he kept researching secretly, but it all proved to be futile. He could only see them, but now according to the rewards he could track them. Does tracking them have anything to do with actual tracking? Gustav wondered. He decided not to dwell on it for too long and activated God Eyes. God Eyes has been activated. The surroundings instantly changed color in Gustav's line of sight along with everyone within the vicinity. Gustav zoomed in on the forehead of one of the female participants in the vicinity. Even though her blue hair covered her forehead, he could still see through it. He could see the sign, caret, on her forehead. Life signs were always different for each person. Gustav had never seen the same life signs twice on two different people's foreheads. Gustav inspected the life sign on her forehead. The instant his sight focused on her forehead for 5 seconds, he received a system notification. The life sign caret has been saved, huh? Gustav didn't expect that. To track life sign, visualize the saved life sign. An explanation appeared afterwards. Gustav deactivated God Eyes after seeing this. If this truly enables me to track them, then I'll have to try this when she is farther from me to confirm it, Gustav decided. He didn't want to get too excited about this, since he hadn't confirmed it. However, internally, he was hoping it would be what he wanted. If it is what I want, then this just might be God Eyes' best feature, Gustav said internally before proceeding to check the next reward. Goal completed. Become a city-wide known figure. Plus 2,000 credits. Host has received a hidden skill that can only be activated when rage has gone beyond a particular level. 2,000 credits? That's a lot. Gustav felt a rush of excitement upon seeing this. He could only get 200 credits after gathering 1,000,000 EXP. So getting 2,000 from completing a single goal was something he didn't expect. There were a lot of goals in the goals panels, and he could check for their rewards. Still, he had never seen this one before, so he guessed this was one of the ones that were at the bottom. This is good. Looks like I can save up for that bloodline once I get about 20 more of the same reward. Gustav thought before proceeding to check the next reward. A hidden skill that can only be activated when I'm enraged? Looks like it might never be activated. A sigh escaped Gustav's mouth as he thought. Chapter 219. A hidden skill that can only be activated when I'm enraged? Looks like it might never be activated. A sigh escaped Gustav's mouth as he thought. Gustav couldn't remember the last time he was enraged about something. Even when beating up Eben, who was the cause of the kitchen accident, he wasn't enraged. He always calmed himself down, which was why he was able to handle the situation the way he did. He could tell that this hidden skill was probably one that would only take effect when he lost his mind to rage. While Gustav was busy contemplating about other things and making plans, the fourth test phase was finally coming to an end. The last two participants dealt with the last sub-phases simultaneously. The AI calculated their score, and in a few seconds their assessment score was displayed. This marked the end of the fourth phase, which had been going on for more than 12 hours. Even though it took up a lot of time, almost the entire city stayed up to watch it. At this time, it was already early the next morning. So far, lots of participants had shown talent and promise. This was to be expected since the more than 10,000 candidates that participated in the test phase had already been disqualified. Those left were amongst the best of the participants. Gradier Zanatus stood up to address everyone after the last two participants finished their test. I commend you all on a job well done today. Each and every one of you have successfully completed the fourth phase, but what comes next will determine if you get to participate in the last phase or not, he voiced out. As it has been mentioned before, an hidden ranking was prepared since the beginning of the test, where points have been attributed to every candidate based on your performance in each phase. The requirement for participating in the next phase is having at least 50 points, Gradier Zanatus added. Rest assured that even if you're at the bottom of the ranking, so long as you manage to get up to 50 points, you would be granted access to participate in the final phase. Gradier Zanatus had a feeling that some of them might feel this way, so he decided to add this. Now the ranking shall be revealed. Make sure to check for your badge number or name. Immediately after he finished saying this, Gradier Zanatus took his seat. Troyan, 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 Troyan. On the 4 screens placed in different parts of the stadium, like arena, a ranking board suddenly appeared. On this ranking board, names and badge numbers of 233 participants appeared along with scores in front of them. The participants began to check the ranking out for their names and scores. Even though there were up to 200 names on the screens were big enough so everyone was able to check for their scores without having to strain their eyes. All over the city, everyone could also see the ranking board on the screens. Parents prayed while checking for the names of their children, hoping they made the cut. Chatter, chatter, chatter. The spectators' area became noisy as participants began to see their names and scores. Dash, I'm safe 60 points, dash 80 points, yes. Dash, I really cut it close with 51 points, sigh. I was really lucky this time. Dash, damn it, I only needed 1 more point. How could this have happened? Some voices were cries of joy, while others were the opposite. Haha, you weaklings, bow before my 150 points, Rhea shouted out and stood, while laughing after noticing his score. Dash, oh my, he truly got that high. Dash, damn, my points are nothing compared to his. Dash, with points that high, I guess he does have the right to be cocky. Voices of defeat could be heard coming from the participants sitting around them. Hey, idiot, check out the number 3 name. Glade folded her arms and closed her eyes as she spoke in a cool manner. Rhea did as he was told and looked for the third name on the ranking board. He noticed Glade's name and checked for her score. His mouth hung wide open immediately after he saw it. TW. 230 points. He stuttered with a look of disbelief after seeing her points. Fool, also check 2 names below yours. Timmy also voiced out while folding his arms on Rhea's left. Rhea did that also, and noticed Timmy's score was a solid 200. Dash, haha, he's the weakest among them all. Dash serves him right for being so cocky. Rhea's forehead creased as he heard that and sat down with a dejected look. How could they get such higher scores than I did? Rhea looked down as he thought. Humph. Weak, loud mouth, Glade said with a look of dominance. What are you talking about, Cowtail? You only managed to defeat me this time, but next time you both will kiss my ass. Rhea replied while shouting out. I'm very sure I wouldn't want to kiss something so smelly and disgusting. Glade voiced out with a repressed look. You. Who told you it's smelly? Rhea questioned with an annoyed tone. I can sniff it from miles away. What? How dare you, Cowtail? Who are you calling Cowtail? I'll kill you. Not if I kill you first. Timmy shook his head from the side as both of them argued back and forth. You both have no sense of your surroundings, do you? He said internally with a look of pity. He turned to stare at Gustav and Angie, who were seated on the right side of Glade. As expected, who else would have gotten the highest? He muttered while turning his face to look up. 1. Candidate 00032, Edwin Umbrella, 67 points 2. Candidate 00045, Estrella Lombard, 102 points 3. Candidate 00054, Glade Inayusha, 230 points 4. Candidate 00098, Gunter Badmus, 52 points 5. Candidate 00121, Angie Villandrobadia, 223.6. Candidate 00126, Gustav Crimson, 470 points. Chapter 220. 6. Candidate 00126, Gustav Crimson, 470 points. The names were arranged based on badge numbers and scores. Gustav's score was the highest among all the participants. After the participants noticed his score, he became the subject of discussion once again. It seems she's the only one he doesn't look at with hostility. There must be a reason why he shuts everyone out, Timmy thought while staring at them. Rhea and Glade were still in a heated argument while Gustav was complimenting Angie on her performance. Timmy and Maltida were the only silent ones in the group, currently. It's all thanks to you drilling me, Angie replied with a smile. No, it's all thanks to your ability. You don't have to give me credit for everything. Be proud of yourself this time. You truly did well, Gustav replied with a smile. Angie stared at his face, which seemed to glow up in a very attractive format as he smiled. A shade of red appeared on her cheeks as she turned to face the other side. But it truly is no. Angie was in the process of speaking when Gradier Xanatus stood to his feet to address everyone again. Now that the scores have been revealed, candidates below the score of 50 have 10 seconds to leave this place. Gradier Xanatus voiced out with an authoritative tone. A timer started counting down on the screens. Finally, some participants stood up with crestfallen looks before heading towards the glowing doorways behind the spectators' area. In about 10 seconds, 30 participants left through the doorways. Right now, the participants left were a little less than 200. All the participants that got below 50 points didn't bother waiting or trying to prove stubborn since they knew how the MBO operates. The MBO wouldn't tolerate nonsense, so they all obeyed and left before the 10 seconds timer was up. Now, I shall give some explanations regarding the 5th phase. Gradier Xanatus begun speaking. The 5th phase, which, as you might have figured, is the last phase. It will be situated at a secret location where participants that also pass the fourth phase from cities all around the world will be gathered. Great Ears Anatus paused for a bit to let it sink in after saying this. Chatter, chatter, chatter. Joyous looks could be seen on the faces of the participants after hearing that. Dash, if we manage to pass, we'll be enlisted. Dash, that is going to be the last step required. Great Ears Anatus started speaking again after a few seconds. The participants that passed the special test 6 months back are also undergoing the last phase. Dash, what? We also have to participate. Dash, how come we didn't know about this before? Dash, how can they place us in the same category as these losers? The youngsters in white uniforms didn't like this piece of information. After passing the special test, they thought they wouldn't have to go through any other test. But it looks like their speculation was wrong. Only the special class candidates will be exempted from undergoing the final phase, Great Ears Anatus added. Everyone had already expected this, so they weren't surprised. Some of them started wondering if Gustav was also going to participate, since he passed the special class difficulty. Now, the final phase is different from what you've been undergoing so far. But it is the real deal because you're going to be facing true danger, Great Ears Anatus said with a serious tone. It won't be an understatement to say that there is the danger of death if you undertake this test, he added. Chatter, chatter, chatter. The place became noisy once again after the participants heard that. The participants were starting to understand why the previous tests were so difficult. It would seem the MBO was trying to eliminate the weaker ones who probably wouldn't handle the final phase. Since the test was so dangerous, it would mean the weaker ones were bound to get hurt and most likely cause a death toll. Participants who made it this far would be strong enough to get through the phase with little or no deaths. Now, mind you, only 100 participants from each city across the world will be enlisted in the end. So the points you have gathered today will be a big help for you, Great Ears Anatus explained. Not to worry, even if you have low points, you only need to do what is required in the next phase to increase your points and get enough to be among the top 100 participants in your city. These words made some of them calm their minds. Everyone was either tense or intrigued about the final phase or both. The normal participants realized that since candidates that passed the special test would be participating in the final phase, not only was the competition going to get tougher, but the numbers would be higher. This meant there will be over 200 participants, and more than half of that would be unable to make it through. This made them feel even more tensed since the candidates that passed the special test were stronger than normal. You have a 24 hours break to do whatever you want and also think it over if you truly want to participate in the final test phase. More information on the test will be given at the gathering tomorrow before you're transported to the secret location. You're free to visit anywhere on floor 602 and the next 5 floors above floor 602. Beyond that is restricted. Rooms and other facilities needed are available for every participant. Fighting or getting physical amongst each other will result in disqualification. After saying this, Great Ears Anatus and the other 4 supervisors disappeared with a flash of bright light. When the supervisors disappeared, the participants stood up and started leaving through the glowing doorways behind the spectator seats. They were transported back to floor 602. Immediately, they arrived on floor 602. Gustav excused himself from the group and started heading towards the room area. It's time. I only need to channel it a little bit more to get to the 4th step, Gustav said internally as he moved across the corridor. Chapter 221. They were transported back to floor 602. Immediately, they arrived on floor 602. Gustav excused himself from the group and started heading towards the room area. It's time. I only need to channel it a little bit more to get to the 4th step, Gustav said internally as he moved across the corridor. Gustav activated the map and confirmed that the room area that was restricted to the normal participants was now accessible. Gustav deactivated it and started moving towards that area once again. When he got to the area of intersection, he could see the route that led to the room area on the left, while going up ahead led to the exit of the floor. Gustav noticed a figure coming from up ahead. The figure also seemed to be heading towards the room area, but he paused when he noticed Gustav. It was a black, curly-haired 57 kid with similar facial features to that of Gustav. The both of them paused their footsteps before arriving at the corner spot that led to the turning and made eye contact. Smirk. Frown. Gustav smiled while the other kid, who was obviously his little brother, had a long scowl on his face. The atmosphere became tense in an instant, but Gustav's reaction seemed to be reducing the tension. I know what you did, kid. I may not have the time to deal with you right now, but don't worry, soon enough, Gustav voiced out before turning towards the side to head into the room area. You. Endrik turned around and was about to attack Gustav from behind when he remembered something and paused. Gustav's grin grew wider as he kept moving forward. By the time I'm done with you, you'll be sorry, Endrik shouted out while pointing at Gustav's back. Gustav ignored his exclamation and kept moving forward. He looked around for his room. Endrik clenched his fist as Gustav's back grew farther and farther away from his line of sight. Just you wait. Big brother my ass. After about 7 minutes of searching, Gustav found a room with his badge number on it. He used the same method as before to unlock the door and went in. This room happened to be more spacious than the previous one. There was even the view of the city from the window panes behind. Gustav wasted no time in heading towards the bed area and sitting in a cross-legged format. He closed his eyes and breathed in as he started channeling his bloodline. In the beginning, before he became a Zulu ranked or even started channeling his bloodline, the system gave him a kind of boost. His bloodline was channeled past the 3rd point, and since there were only 4 channel points, he only needed to channel it to the 4th to become a Zulu ranked. After he became a Zulu ranked, he noticed that the 4 channel points located within his body had been linked. Bloodline channeling was literally making the bloodline within the body increase in saturation, so the points became linked by his bloodline after getting to the Zulu rank, forming a circle. Within the circle was a kind of small red pool that increased in size as Gustav went from the 1st step to 2nd step. Now that he was 3rd step, the red pool had increased in size to the extent that it was nearly making contact with the circular barricade the 4 channel points formed around it. The moment its viscosity increased to the point where it made contact with the 4 channel points barricade, Gustav would have achieved 4th step. Gustav focused his senses on the red pool inside, and it started bubbling. His focus at this moment was so intense that a kind of serene vibe had been formed around him. The surroundings was silent except for the bubbling sounds coming from Gustav. 5 weeks ago, after Gustav got the confession from Eben, he gave him something he had been preparing for a while. When he was abducted back then, he asked Miss Amy to get him the brain tweak helmet used on him. Of course, she asked why he needed it, and he just claimed that it was for research purposes, and truly Gustav wanted to experiment on the helmet, but he never truly had the time to do that since he was preoccupied with so many things. When he was putting revenge plans into motion, he remembered the helmet which he kept within his 2nd room. He was initially going to wipe Eben's brain with atomic disintegration, but remembering that he couldn't control how it went due to what happened with Hung Jo and Ben the other time, he decided making use of the brain tweak helmet would be a better option. He wiped Eben's memory of the last 1 day with the brain tweak device and returned him back to the laboratory after making him unconscious. Gustav didn't want to arouse any suspicions when he finally came for the true culprit behind the scenes, which was why he resulted to this. He had decided he would fully deal with Eben after taking the entire disciplinary committee down. For the next 2 days, Gustav made plans. However, he didn't negate his training and hunting down mixed breeds within the border. Even though he hadn't really been focusing on killing mixed breeds within the border, he still kept feeling a kind of tingling on his skin whenever he went there. It always felt like there was an invisible eye watching him, and it got stronger each time. Even when he tried to shake the feeling off by running from location to location within the border, it was futile. Gustav had to multitask to make plans to discover why he felt that way within the border, while also dealing with the kitchen incident. After Gustav finished making plans, he had to contact a particular person to assist in a crucial part of the plan. During break in school the next day, he stood underneath a shade behind the school cafeteria, conversing with a girl. "Do you understand the plan?" Gustav asked the white-haired girl in front of him. Chapter 222. Do you understand the plan? Gustav asked the white-haired girl in front of him. I do. The girl nodded slightly in response. But if I do this, will that ensure that you'd help me out in the future? She proceeded to ask, if this goes well, you'll definitely score more points with me and increase your chances of securing a future partnership. Just make sure you don't mess it up, Gustav stated. This girl he was speaking to was none other than Maltida. Gustav devised a plan where he needed the input of a prestigious and popular girl within the school. Maltida was the only one that came to mind, so he decided to call her up. I won't mess up. I have good acting skills too, you know, she smiled wryly. Gustav could sense a feeling of melancholy in her voice, but he didn't dwell on it. All right, let's head back. 2 hours later inside the room, Gustav opened his eyes and smiled. Finally, the 4th step, he said with a look of elation. He could feel his body being nourished with energy the instant he achieved the 4th step. The red pool within his body expanded and made contact with the 4 points barricades. After that happened, they merged together, and Gustav couldn't sense the 4 points anymore. Everything became one large red blob for a few seconds. Red roots started growing out of it. Looks like achieving these roots have something to do with achieving serial rank, Gustav noted while observing it within his body. After a few more seconds, he stood up and moved around the room, trying to feel the changes within his body. I can feel a certain kind of energy oozing out of my body. It's very faint, but I can sense it, Gustav said internally while throwing his arm out like he was fighting an invisible opponent. After a few seconds of jumping from place to place across the room in a bid to test out his body improvement, Gustav decided to head out. I won't be able to get a handle on my current strength if I don't test it out one way or the other, Gustav said internally while changing his clothes. He was still in the organic suit at this time. It wasn't hard to get out of it since it had a computerized function that made it dismantle independently. After Gustav got out of it, he put on black pants and a hoodie before heading out of his room. He wore the hoodie fully on his head and held his face down as he moved across the corridor. After getting out of the room area, he headed towards the left. Time to check out the other floors, Gustav said internally as he moved towards the exit area of the current floor. Gustav was sure that the MBO tower didn't just have floors for sleeping and eating. Obviously, the participants were only sent to these floors for accommodation. Now that they were given access to the next 5 floors, he was intrigued about their functionality. He felt that the MBO wouldn't just make 5 floors next to each other just for the purpose of accommodation. Gustav arrived at the end of the corridor in a few and stepped onto the circular, glowing panel in front. Immediately after he got on top, a bright glow appeared from above and covered him from head to toe. Truian. His body was pulled up with intense speed. Gustav was unable to make out his surroundings and could only see a white light flashing in his line of sight for about 5 seconds. After the 5 seconds passed, his vision cleared up, and he found himself at the end of a corridor. He could tell that he had already arrived on the next floor. He looked down and noticed that he was standing on a similar glowing panel to the one he used to get here. Gustav started moving forward down the corridor. Map, he called out. Troyan. The map of the floor was displayed, and Gustav instantly took notice of the change. Upon arriving on this floor, the map had updated itself and changed the layout to that of this floor's own. Oh, a testing floor! Gustav noticed that this was the only word on the map. There were different sections on the map, but they all had numbers representing them. Gustav moved across the corridor and turned towards the second left turning he came across. He even met some MBO officials while moving across the place, but they ignored him since they knew that no one would be able to get to this place without giving authorization first. After moving for a few more minutes and taking several turns, Gustav finally arrived in front of a doorway and walked through it. He arrived in a wide open space. This space had runways and different kinds of humongous humanoid machines that could be seen moving about in different spots. Lots of officials in black could be seen moving about here. Towards the east, Gustav could see a massive green one. It was so big that its head was only about 100 feet away from making contact with the ceiling. It would only need to raise its arms to make contact, since it was more than 1,000 feet tall. It had a wide circular hole in its chest area with blade-like arms and a triangular-shaped head. There was also a purple glow at the tip of its head. About 4,000 feet ahead, there was a square-shaped structure placed opposite it. It looked metallic, but it was expanding in size as seconds passed. Wow, this is the first time I've seen technology like this. How are mixed bloods supposed to fight against this if an enemy makes use of them? Gustav wondered as he stood by the side and watched. Tesla OV number 144783 at 100% capacity. Initiating charge in 5. A loud robotic voice reverberated across the vicinity. 4, 3, 2, 1. The empty hollow space in the chest area of the large humanoid machine had already lit up with dangerous, purple-looking energy. Fire! The instant this command was given, a purple beam shot out with intensity from the chest area of the humanoid machine. Zwoon woon. Chapter 223. Fire! The instant this command was voiced out, the purplish beam shot out with intensity from the chest area of the large humanoid machine. Zwin! In an instant, it arrived before the square-shaped metallic structure and slammed into it. The mighty purplish beam consumed the entire square-shaped structure in a matter of seconds. Such immense power! Gustav was awed by what he had just witnessed. He stood there and kept watching, focusing his attention on the appearance of the beam. The entire metallic square-shaped structure was as large as a bungalow building, yet the purplish beam was large enough to cover it. After the power of the purplish beam died down, Gustav noticed that there was still something left from the square-shaped metallic structure. Although what was left wasn't very large compared to the initial size, Gustav was still surprised to see that there was something left. Tesla OV number 144783 has failed the incineration test. The robotic voice from before announced, once again. At first, Gustav was dumbfounded and wondered how that performance would be considered a failure, but in the next second, he figured it out. Vryanin, what was left of the metallic square-shaped device, started increasing in size, and in just a few seconds it had become as large as it was before. Gustav realized that the test was probably based on the destruction of that regenerative square structure in one go. Although the structure had taken quite the damage and was nearly totally obliterated, the part of it that was still left was enough for the entire thing to regenerate. It was a failure again, huh? The fire power isn't strong enough to obliterate a level 98 cubic espionite in one go. Send a report to Joe Industries. Gustav could hear the voices of the officials that had been observing from his standing position. He saw a person dressed in a kind of pilot uniform come out of the large humanoid machine as some officials also went up to meet him. Gustav, who had been standing at the entrance area, finally decided to move to other areas and check them out. The moment he took a step forward, an alarm rang out. Beep, 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 beep. Unprotected life form detected. A robotic voice announced. The instant that announcement was made, everyone turned around to stare at the entrance area. Gustav noticed that their eyes were focused on him. Oh, in the unprotected life form, he realized. Some of the officials started heading towards him. Kid, to go further, and you'll need a protective suit. The first to get to him was a fat-looking middle-aged man with black goatee. The testing floors are always very dangerous, especially for a youngster such as yourself, so please, before proceeding, put on a protective suit. Another male official with a bulky build explained after hearing that Gustav understood the reason for the alarm and stares. The officials obviously noticed him when he first arrived and also knew that he was among the participants of the entrance test. However, they had thought Gustav was only checking the place out and wouldn't go past the entrance area, which was also a safe zone, so they ignored him. "Where do I get the suit?" Gustav inquired. The officials pointed behind him, towards his left. There was a silver-colored booth there. Gustav didn't miss this booth upon his entry into this test area, but he had totally ignored it, thinking it was some kind of storage room or something. Gustav did as he was told and moved towards the booth. The booth had no door, but the moment he arrived in front of it, an opening appeared and he proceeded to go in. After getting in, a bright light engulfed his entire being, and Gustav was reminded of the time he arrived on the static floor to undergo the test sub-phases. In a few seconds the light went out, and Gustav found his entire body clad in a bulky white and black suit with a large helmet. His entire body had been covered from head to toe. Because of the helmet, his vision had been dyed red. However, it didn't hinder his visuality. Instead, it kind of helped in improving it. The helmet was a computerized type that gave him a 270 degrees vision and also red energy, so it could alarm him when a situation was dangerous. Gustav could read energy using God eyes, but he didn't have a 270 degrees vision unless he transformed into a solar worm. Also, the suit was extremely sturdy. From feeling the texture, Gustav could tell that it would be very difficult to break through its defenses. Gustav walked out of the booth, and the officials in the vicinity nodded before some of them went back to their activities. The fat official with a black goatee walked towards Gustav and asked, "Would you like a tour of test floor 012? Gustav nodded in affirmation and proceeded to follow behind the man. By the way, official Glennis from the HMR Warfare Department, the man decided to strike a conversation with Gustav as they moved about the place. Gus. Gustav was about to reply with his own name when Officer Glennis interrupted. Gustav Crimson, haha, you don't need to tell me your name. You're popular all across the tower right now, he said with a burst of light laughter. Oh, Gustav muttered with a wry smile. Honestly, we're all proud that we have such a genius in our city. Be sure to represent us well in the global final phase, Officer Glennis stated. Gustav nodded slightly, but within himself he said, I don't really care about representing the city. I'm here for my own reasons, but I will make sure I don't soil the name of the teacher who trained me by performing badly. Officer Glennis, Gustav called out to him as they passed through another area where a large humanoid machine was initiating combat with another towards their southwest. Yes. Officer Glennis responded. You mentioned being from the HMR Warfare Department. What is that all about? Gustav asked. Chapter 224. You mentioned being from the HMR Warfare Department. What is that all about? Gustav asked. Oh, yes, you see. The MBO has different departments tasked in different fields of operation and specialty. Officer Glennis started explaining. He went on to tell Gustav that this department made use of humanoid technology to go on missions issued by the MBO. Apparently, the humanoid machines was not only technological based, but also biological, since it also made use of the pilot's bloodline to boost its capabilities. These humanoid machines were called HMR. As they moved about the place, Officer Glennis explained a lot to him about the department while also showing him different types of HMR as well as happily introducing some of their pilots to him. Officer Glennis wasn't a pilot. He was one of the higher-ranking analytical HMR engineers working in the department, so he was well known by a lot of pilots. Gustav also noticed that he wasn't the only one dressed like a puffed-up marshmallow moving about the place. He had seen quite a few people in protective suits like him. Since he noticed that the officials weren't in protective outfits, Gustav guessed that these were probably other participants checking out other floors like he was. He also noticed that they were moving by themselves, unlike him who was being toured around by Officer Glennis. He realized that Officer Glanus seemed to be giving him special treatment, which made Gustav feel quite suspicious because people don't normally do that, but when he remembered his newly acquired fame, he felt that was probably the reason. Officer Glanus took him to the far south of the test floor and called on a pilot to get into one of the HMRs and give Gustav a little show. The pilot, who went by the name Heim, proceeded to enter his HMR, which was about 300 feet tall with a black armor covering its chest area and yellow arms that looked similar to massive spears. Gustav watched as the large humanoid machine engaged a square-shaped metallic structure similar to the one he saw at the entrance earlier. This one transformed into a kind of monstrosity that Gustav had never seen before, and the pilot engaged it. God Eyes has been activated. Oh, I see it draws a certain kind of energy from the bloodline and combines it with the weaponry aspects of the machine. He is also able to use his bloodline ability through the HMR. Gustav was using both the see-through ability and the energy reading to check on the internal structure of the HMR. He wasn't able to observe every part, but he was able to use what he had noticed to bring up an analysis. Gustav asked if he could test drive an HMR, but Officer Glanus declined, saying a Zulu rank would be unable to endure the strain to the body as well as the mind and end up becoming paralyzed permanently. After this display was over, Gustav left Test Area 012 and moved to the closest one after it, which was Test Area 010. Even though the amount of test areas on the map were up to 100, they were all on the same floor, which proved that a single floor in the MBO tower was larger than the combination of multiple parks. Even though there were up to 100 test areas and 4 more unrestricted floors above, Gustav had decided that he was going to visit every one of the test areas as well as the remaining 4 floors. It was still around 9 in the morning, and since they were given a 24 hours break, about 19 hours were still left. Gustav wanted to make use of half of that time to check on all the floors and use part of the rest to test out his strength in one of the training rooms. Gustav started going from test area to test area, and he was awed by the things he saw. The MBO had a diverse number of technologies and wonderful weaponry in their possession. The purpose of the test floor was to try out varieties of new things that hadn't been tested in the battlefield yet. Gadgets, artilleries, transport combat vehicles, enhancement suits, etc. With everything he had seen while moving from place to place within the last 3 hours, Gustav concluded that the MBO was probably the most equipped force in the entire galaxy. He hadn't gone into outer space before, but the fact that he had read about how Earth had made pact with other life forms outside of the galaxy on mutual ground without being exploited or invaded proved that the MBO was plenty capable, since they are in charge of keeping the Earth safe from extraterrestrial life forms. After another 2 hours had gone by, Gustav was finally visiting the last test area, which was Test Area 104. Immediately, he went through the entrance. A loud explosion greeted him. Boom! About 100 feet ahead of his position was a sight of a mighty explosion that was still increasing. Bang! The shock wave slammed into Gustav, sending him flying towards the wall behind. A crack appeared on the wall, and Gustav's body became embedded 7 inches in. Gustav felt dizzy for a second as his body slid to the ground. Cough! Cough! Gustav placed his hands underneath his mouth as he coughed out specks of blood onto his sleeves. His ears were ringing so loudly that he couldn't even hear the sound of his coughing. Every time he left a test area, he would have to return the protective suit he got from that test area, and when he visited the next, he'll have to wear the one available over there. Since he was just arriving here, he wasn't putting on any protective suit, which was why he received the full brunt of the shockwave with his body alone. Anti-shockwave matter 02 has been overwhelmed. Anti-shockwave matter 03 has been activated. Shockwave is now being suppressed. Explosion barrier 02 has been overwhelmed. Explosion barrier 03 has been activated. Explosion is now being contained. The voices of different AI reverberated across the place as sirens rang out. Chapter 225. Explosion is now being contained. The voices of different AIs reverberated across the place as sirens rang out. Gustav was starting to regain his senses, so he heard bits of the announcements. -5, 20 HP. It's been a while since I last bled. I wonder what caused this explosion, Gustav said internally as he cleaned his blood-stained sleeves while sitting up and leaning his back against the wall. He stared at the front, where he could see the explosion being covered by a blue energy field as it shrunk in size. At the very least, I got something from it, Gustav thought while reaching out to grab something in midair. He grabbed onto something only he could see because, right before the shockwave slammed into him, he activated Energy Installment. Energy Installment absorbed part of the energy from the blast into a spherical orb that was currently invisible to everyone's eyes except Gustav. The system just reacted to it. Gustav noticed, but before he could confirm, he noticed the explosion had almost shrunk completely. Officials could now be seen moving about the place with panic expressions displayed on their faces. Dash, who knew the upgraded reactor would go haywire because of the experiment and cause such a disaster? The third layer explosion barrier had to be implemented because it overwhelmed the first and second. The power was too much for the installments to contain. Gustav could hear the voices of the officers from his position. None of them looked injured in the slightest. However, the surrounding was in shambles. Dash, are the kids all right? One of the officers in blue asked. Dash, yes, Captain Mitch. The protective suits functioned well enough to keep them safe from the explosion. Upon hearing that, Gustav understood that other participants were also on this floor. He noticed that the injuries he received from getting blasted backwards by the shock waves were almost fully healed. Gustav decided to stand, but before he could, one of the officers ahead stared in the direction of the entrance and noticed Gustav. Captain, there's a kid over there. I think he's injured. The MBO officer voiced out and hurriedly started moving towards Gustav's location. The other officers also noticed Gustav seated on the ground far behind with his back against the cracked wall. Dash, a kid without a protective suit? Get the medic over here immediately, the captain commanded as he also approached Gustav. Gustav stood up before anyone could get to him. I'm fine, he stated while cleaning the blood at the sides of his lips. Kid, you're going to be wait. How can you stand? The officer that noticed him voiced out while scrutinizing Gustav from head to toe. He could see blood on Gustav's sleeves and a little dirt on his cloth, which came from slamming into the wall. But aside from that, there was nothing else. Dash, wasn't he caught in the blast? Why does he look only slightly injured? Dash, this isn't a force a kid like this should be able to handle. Dash, he should be half dead by now. What's up with this kid? The other officers that had arrived couldn't believe their eyes, seeing Gustav standing and talking like he was unaffected. They wouldn't have believed he got caught up in the blast if not for the cracked wall behind and burned parts of Gustav's clothes as well as some other things, which clearly proved that he was caught up in the explosion. Are you all right, kid? The captain asked while approaching Gustav. He stood opposite Gustav and observed him. I'm fine. Gustav was about to repeat himself when one of the officers on the left interrupted. This face looks quite familiar. Oh my, aren't you candidate 00126, the Rising Star? He voiced out. When he mentioned that, the rest of the officers' eyes also widened slightly. Dash, he is the one. Dash, being on the receiving end of 1% of that shockwave would leave a Zulu rank on the brink of death. Dash, oh, looks like he truly is more powerful than the rest. Dash, truly a promising young lad, this one. Upon hearing them speak about him this way, Gustav was nearly half cringed to death. The Rising Star, what's that? More like a falling star, since that's what made me what I am, Gustav said internally. Although he felt like this on the inside, he didn't let it show in his expression. Instead, he just kept a blank face. The captain proceeded to apologize to Gustav and explain what had caused the disaster. The explosion, of course, was caused by an experiment gone wrong. A new power source meant for backing up a spacecraft's weapon system was being tested. The original power source and the substitute didn't sync well, causing the explosion a few minutes back. Both of them exploded together and overwhelmed the first and second layer security protocols put in place. Originally, incidents that involved explosions occurred a lot since they experimented with spacecraft engines. However, they hadn't expected it to be this bad. Luckily, Gustav was very far away from the core of the explosion, which was why he was only hit by a little bit of the shock wave. If he had been to the explosion's core, his injury would have been way worse than this. It still surprised the officers around that Gustav was okay. However, since they knew he had a unique transformation bloodline, they guessed that the beast he could transform into had regenerative abilities. In order to make it up to Gustav, they decided to give him a tour of the place exclusively, even though there wasn't much to see because the explosion had incinerated half of the equipment and gadgets. Gustav was only able to see a few uninteresting things that were left at the far corners of the test area. After a few more minutes, Gustav left the test area since it was about to go through some kind of rejuvenation. The only thing he saw that piqued his interest was the half-destroyed spacecraft that was half the size of the spacecraft in test site number 47. Gustav had always wanted to enter a functioning spacecraft. Unfortunately, this spacecraft, just like the first one he ever came into contact with, lacked functionality. Chapter 226. He moved towards the exit area of this floor with a slightly disappointed look on his face. When Gustav arrived before the panel that was going to move him up to the next floor, a smile appeared on his face. "At least I got something out of it," he said. "Does host wish to absorb this energy into the system?" Yes/no. Gustav could see the system notification in front of him as he held onto the spherical orb filled with dark blue-colored energy. It turned out that the energy he absorbed from the explosion was compatible with the system. The system couldn't absorb every type of energy to upgrade. It could only absorb specific types of energy. Now Gustav had figured that the power source for spacecraft was also among those types of energy. As the panel beamed Gustav up to the next floor, he activated God Eyes to check the energy points of the energy contained within the spherical orb. God Eyes has been activated 129,000. Even though the number wasn't as high as when he absorbed the Salator pure crystal, this amount was already high enough, and it came from just the shockwaves alone. Maybe it would have been higher if I had been in the heart of the explosion, Gustav said internally as he arrived on the next floor. But if I was, I probably wouldn't have survived. Gustav recollected just how mighty the explosion was as he started moving forward. Gustav started touring the second accessible floor also. Yes, he said internally, and the system began to absorb the energy from the orb. Absorbing energy 1/100%. On the 602nd floor, where all the participants were accommodated, Angie and Glade stood in front of the room with the number 00126 above it and knocked repeatedly. "I don't think he's in," Glade spoke from behind. She was tired of seeing Angie knock on the door over and over again. "Maybe he's asleep," Angie sighed as she turned around and leaned her back against Gustav's door with a crestfallen look. "Him? Does he even sleep with those menacing eyes? I doubt he does." Glade voiced out as she imagined Gustav's face. "What? Ha ha ha." Angie started laughing after hearing that. Glade made a low humph sound and leaned against Gustav's room door also. "Maybe he'd be a lot more good-looking if he wasn't so grumpy. Hee hee." Angie giggled again. "He is really OD-looking." Angie muttered with a dreamy look. Glade turned to stare at her and shook her head with pity before tapping her forehead. "Snap out of it, fangirl," she stated while Angie held her forehead cutely with a look of pain. "Come with me. Let's go somewhere else," Glade voiced out while grabbing Angie by the wrist and pulling her along as she stormed off. In a particular part of the city, Miss Amy stood in front of a glass wall. She seemed to be on a call with someone, and within a glass wall and was the large greenish rock she got from the tall building a day ago. She was still clad in the full black leather jacket and purple shirt, but at the moment they looked tattered. Parts of her clothes were torn and messed up. She had a small scald on her left neck area. Yeah, those bastards were really strong, and I was almost forced to remove my limiters, she said with a frown. He really brought in some of the well-known powerful mercenary mixed bloods to guard the rock. Of course, I didn't let them leave in one piece either. Miss Amy spat out a chunk of blood from her mouth towards the side and continued speaking. Yeah, I got the rock now, but something doesn't seem quite right. With the information I gathered, those 5 bastards should be strong enough to cause me more injuries since I still have my limiters. For some reason, it seemed like they were reducing their attack strength. Don't get me wrong, they still attacked me severely, but with the information I gathered, they should be more powerful. I can sense that something is amiss somewhere. It doesn't matter what he plans in secret. He'll never get his hands on this rock again until I figure out what's within. I am not handing it over. You lot suck at keeping things safe, especially in such a place that is full of corruption. There's no guarantee that it won't end up in the wrong hands if it is kept there. Have you forgotten that his father's industry partners with you lots? Shut up, you dimwit. I'm keeping it, Miss Amy voiced out and cut the call. She stared at the green rock within the glass wall barricade. What's so special about this rock? Sigh. One thing leads to another, and I still haven't gotten a lead on what Gustav found within the border, she muttered, but then she noticed something on the rock. It just glowed up for an instant there. Miss Amy said while moving closer to the glass wall. It was only for an instant, but she saw the glow. Why do I feel like his presence has gotten stronger? And it's coming from that, Miss Amy wondered while scrutinizing the crystal. Even if it's risky, I must make him have contact with this rock to confirm my suspicions, Miss Amy thought with a fierce look. Looks like I'll have to attend the final phase in person. After another 6 hours had gone by, Gustav had successfully visited 3 more floors. His knowledge of the MBO had been significantly increased in the last 8 hours. He also realized that the MBO was very diversified, different departments with different purposes, and had all come together to make a perfect base of operations. Remembering how there were other towers in the remaining 5 prestigious cities, Gustav came to the conclusion that the MBO had numerous resources. They would definitely be a force to reckon with if anyone tried to mess with them. This made Gustav wonder, why does the MBO never interfere in matters regarding lower-graded mixed bloods abuse or the happenings within the neighborhood area? They could have easily dealt with such happenings, so why? Chapter 227. This made Gustav wonder, why does the MBO never interfere in matters regarding lower-graded mixed bloods abuse or the happenings within the neighborhood area? They could have easily dealt with such happenings, so why? Did they truly feel it was beneath them to handle such tasks? Gustav said internally as he moved across the floor. Thinking about this, he knew the society trampled upon weaklings and made them feel less of themselves. Even though normal humans and Slarkovs weren't treated as bad as weak mixed bloods, they were still made to feel inferior, which was one reason they lived at the edge of the city. The fact that the MBO had ignored small matters like this made Gustav feel disgusted about joining them because he was also a victim of a similar situation. He would have died if not for the system, so he believed others would have successfully committed suicide since not everyone could be as lucky as him. He wasn't feeling like a hero or anything. He just felt the MBO should, at the very least, live up to the name they built for themselves. Since they called themselves the Mixed Blood Organization and were supposed to deal with every situation concerning mixed bloods on the planet, they shouldn't ignore even small things like that. If Gustav was still feeling petty, the MBO would be among the places he would have decided to take revenge on since, in one way or the other, they were kind of involved. However, his end goal in joining the MBO was to make use of them and build his strength till he reached a level where not even a single person would be able to dictate whether he lives or dies. This place needs to undergo some serious changes. Time to start making plans. Gustav's expression turned fierce as he came to an internal conclusion. After another 2 hours had gone by, Gustav had finished touring all the 5 unrestricted floors. At this time, it was already late in the evening, but 12 hours were still left till the start of the 5th phase. Gustav was not content with everything he had seen. He was still interested in climbing higher and seeing more floors. He approached the exit of the 607th floor and moved towards the panel that would lead him to the next floor. As expected, a red barrier prevented him from going through. Gustav placed his hand on the barrier once again. Should I just absorb enough energy to let me break through? Gustav thought internally with a serious look while checking his surroundings. Smirk. Gustav smirked and turned around. Hidden cameras are almost everywhere. With my rising popularity, there's a chance that I'm being observed. Gustav decided to head towards the closest restroom. He held his right hand up and stared at his badge number. God Eyes has been activated. Gustav used the see-through ability to check out his palm. Even though the badge liquefied and merged my palm, I can still tell that a tracker was inputted. Gustav noticed the small green hiding in the middle of the blood vessels, underneath the number on his palm. He instantly figured out that it was the tracker. Atomic disintegration has been activated. Gustav was about to make use of atomic disintegration to get rid of it, but then he thought of something. What if they get alerted if one of the trackers gets destroyed or loses connection? Gustav wondered. Thinking up to this point, Gustav decided to try another approach. Gravitational energy container has been activated. Gustav conjured a spherical container and made it float in front of him. He concentrated atomic disintegration around his left fingertips, causing them to be coated in silver light. He raised his left hand above his right palm and pointed his index finger that was coated in the silver light towards it. Slash has been activated. Gustav stabbed his left index finger down with intensity. Pucci. His finger pierced into his right palm and came out of the other side. Blood was spilled, but he wasn't done yet. Swai. 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 He cut a square hole on his palm with his fingers, causing blood and meat to fall from underneath. Gustav could see through the hole on his palm, but surprisingly, no expression of pain could be seen on his face. 20 HP, 20 HP, 20 HP. Underneath his right palm, the chunk of flesh he cut out fell into the orb he conjured a while ago. It was currently filling up with his blood. Regeneration has been activated. In a few seconds, his palm stopped bleeding and slowly began to close up. With the way it mixed with my cells, I'm sure the tracker also makes use of blood to function properly. So, this amount of blood, along with my energy, should keep it functioning for the next 30 to 35 minutes. Gustav analyzed. That's how much time I'll have to check out more floors, Gustav concluded. He stared at the mirror in front. It's about time I put my original bloodline to the test. Underscore. Genetic transformation bloodline grade. B abilities tied to bloodline, frowny face, shape-shifting. Joints reversal, size manipulation, cognitive concealment. Underscore. Gustav stared at the system interface, where cognitive concealment was displayed. This was a new ability that was added to shape-shifting after his bloodline got upgraded to be. Gustav had tested out this ability before and noticed that could hide his presence. He would still be visible, but he could sneak up on almost anyone with his presence erased. It was similar to silent advancement, but better because silent advancement only masked his feet, making his movements silent. Now Gustav had decided he was going to shape-shift and also make use of cognitive concealment to hide from the cameras that could see through his change in appearance. The only downside was cognitive concealment could only be activated for about 10 minutes. With the amount of energy it consumed, Gustav could only activate it about 3 times if he didn't want his energy to run out. For Huhuam. Gustav's appearance transformed into a 5-foot-tall, middle-aged-looking man with short brown hair and a full mustache. After changing his clothes, he walked out of the bathroom and left the spherical orb with the tracker floating inside one of the toilets. Chapter 228. After changing his clothes, he walked out of the bathroom, leaving the spherical orb with the tracker floating inside one of the toilets. Gustav had already activated cognitive concealment as he moved towards the exit area of the floor. Energy installment has been activated even before he arrived in front of the red barrier. He had already activated the energy installment. The energy from the red barrier was being sucked away. It weakened due to that, and Gustav only created a small entrance for himself to go in. He passed through it and deactivated energy installment as he stood on the panel. Just as he expected, the moment he deactivated energy installment, the barrier started regaining power and went back to normal. Since I only have 30 minutes, I should make a count. The floors where spacecraft are kept. It starts from floor 1903. The instant Gustav thought of that floor, the panel activated. Shuruam, Swihayans. He was instantly moved up and started traveling through the floors. In just 3 seconds, the beam had taken him past 100 floors. After a minute had gone by, Gustav arrived on floor 1903. The instant he moved past the entry point, his sight was greeted with a large bluish space. Wow! Gustav couldn't help but exclaim as he walked into this place. The place was vast, but Gustav could see the walls behind were transparent. So, this is how space looks like. Gustav couldn't help but admire how beautiful space was looking from this height. The walls were transparent, so he could see the endless darkness of space staring back at him. However, the shiny round lights in the far distance and even close by made everything look marvelous. He could see a side of the blue earth floating and glowing. This part of the floor was already in outer space. However, it wasn't really far since the earth still looked quite large. However, it had already stabbed through the stratosphere. Gustav could see the moon. It still looked a bit far, but it was way larger than he expected. He looked around his surroundings on this floor. Spacecrafts. He had been so occupied with checking out space that he didn't notice the spacecraft lined up in front. Troyan, Troyan, Troyan. The Jelly 127 is ready to take flight. Ashrak Squad is ready to go back up the Falcon reconnaissance on planet Heidi. Announcements from AIs could be heard as some of the spacecraft in the distance lit up. Some spacecraft that he could see were as large as the size of an entire football stadium. Officers in bright blue-colored uniforms could be seen moving from place to place. Gustav also decided to stealthily check the place out while acting as a cleaner. After about 4 hours had gone by, Gustav was heading back towards his room since it was late in the night already. Even though he only spent about 30 minutes up there, he was glad about finally entering space. Well, even though he wasn't really in it, he saw it as adding more knowledge to what he already had. He wasn't able to enter any of the spacecraft, but seeing functioning ones from a closer angle also brought him some kind of insight. After leaving the 1903rd floor, Gustav headed for the training room on floor 602. He tested out his new strength, did some combat self-training, and meditated while making plans. He was now going back to his room to get an early rest for tomorrow's final phase. Unlike the 4th phase, which was broadcasted all across the city, the final phase wouldn't be broadcasted. However, the final phase was like a world stage since it was so dangerous to the point that death was a possibility. So, the MBO didn't want it to be showcased to the public. The only time a broadcast would be displayed was when the participants that passed the phase were being enlisted into the MBO. This was also the time when the 5 great commanders would show themselves. These 5 great commanders were said to be the legends of MBO. They were the 5 most powerful leading figures in the MBO. There are other very powerful top, legendary, well-known officers in the MBO. However, the 5 commanders made decisions regarding things that went on in the MBO. They were not just powerful in strength, but also powerful in command. According to the information Gustav gathered, they were the only ones that could order the number 1 ranked, most powerful MBO officer to go on missions. Gustav already heard rumors about the most powerful man who does not take orders from anyone even though he was in the MBO, except for these 5. He was said to be the most powerful MBO officer and the most powerful mixed blood on the entire planet. The MBO called him the Champion of Earth. That title sounded a little cheesy to Gustav, but when he started hearing of his feats, Gustav began to rethink the title. Gustav guessed the 5 great commanders had quite the power and influence for them to be able to pull off sending him on missions. Although he didn't know much about the most powerful MBO officer, however, since he was hearing about him from a lot of people, Gustav was sure his strength wasn't just superficial. Miss Amy did say she wasn't the most powerful. I guess I have to be prepared to meet these 5 great commanders after the final phase, Gustav said internally as he arrived inside his room. He proceeded to lie down on his bed and sleep off to regain his lost energy. Initializing 5-year quests. Procedure 1/100%. 5-year quests will complete initialization in 5 days. If Gustav was awake at this time, he would have noticed these system notifications. Unfortunately, he wasn't, and just as these notifications appeared, they also disappeared a moment later. The next morning, the participants woke up early. The moment 24 hours went by, an alarm rang out, and the participants were told to hurry towards the waiting room. We shall now head out to the Kaskia ruins. Gradier Xanatus stated after all the participants had been gathered in the hall. Chapter 229. We shall now head out to the Kaskia ruins. Gradier Xanatus stated after all the participants had gathered in the hall. The participants' faces showed confusion upon hearing Gradier Xanatus' words, since this was a location they had never heard of. Nevertheless, they obeyed the next instructions of Gradier Xanatus with no questions, since they knew they'd be briefed later on. Gradier Xanatus urged everyone to go through the spatial doorways that appeared in the middle of the room. After going through those doorways, they arrived inside a hangar where different types of aircraft were kept. 2 large rhombus-shaped aircraft were already waiting for their arrival with engines fired. These aircraft were the size of a 2-story building, colored green with red and black stripes. They had no rolling fans or anything like that. They had been built in such a way that only powering the engines up were enough to make it lift off. Over 200 participants split into 2 and boarded the aircraft. In a few seconds, another spatial opening large enough to consume an entire 3-story building appeared several hundred feet ahead of them. Zwee! Zwee! Both aircraft zoomed off into the spatial opening. After passing through, they appeared tens of thousands of feet above Plankton City. Lots of participants now understood why the tower didn't have an entrance or exit. That wouldn't be needed since the MBO had a variety of teleportation devices that transported people in and out and to different places on the floor. Gustav sat somewhere in the middle of the passenger's seat beside the window areas just so he could look outside. He stared at the city from their current height as they flew towards the northeast part of the city. The speed of the flight was insanely fast, and even with the city being very big, in only about 5 minutes, the various aircraft had already arrived at the edge of the city. While they were moving, the participants were being briefed about the Kaskia ruins. A projection of the place they were traveling to appeared on within both aircraft. The Kaskia Ruins was formerly an underground mining facility located at the borders between Emperim and Ashura cities hundreds of years ago. The artificial intelligence started with this. However, IT attracted a lot of mixed breeds who were drawn by the energy oozing from the unmined energy crystals within the ruins. The AI explained how the ruins became overrun by mixed breeds, which prevented energy miners from working and caused some of them to lose their lives in the process, since it was practically invaded by a multitude of them. The MBO was tasked with cleansing the place and wiping out the mixed breeds that had gathered there. Although the mission was a success, almost all the energy crystals had been consumed by the mixed breeds. The place still attracted a few mixed breeds after the cleansing, because they sensed the remnant of energy left. Nevertheless, since the government couldn't find anything left there, they practically abandoned the facility. About 50 years later, it was turned into a low-level, maximum security prison for mixed bloods and aliens. A barricade was built around it to fence the mixed breeds inside along with the rogue mixed bloods and aliens. Once sentenced to imprisonment in the Kaskia Ruins, the mixed blood or alien will be nearly stripped of their powers before being thrown into the place. They would have to survive for however long their sentence is within the Kaskia Ruins with whatever amount of strength they were left with. The mixed breeds within were also left there, so presently it was a habitat for rogue mixed bloods, mixed breeds, and aliens. It was one of the secluded locations in the world that could be called a mixed blood prison. The mixed bloods within were unable to escape the barricade that surrounded the ruins since they had been weakened. After listening to the information the AI passed across, the participants could more or less understand what the final phase was going to be about. It terrified some of them when they thought about it, but they put up a brave face. In about 20 minutes, the aircraft was already flying above a wasteland area. Nothing but plains and sands could be seen out here. It was like they were in the middle of nowhere. Truin, we have arrived at the Kaskia Ruins. A hologram of Gradier Xanatus appeared inside both spacecraft. The participants looked through the window and noticed a tall barricade in the distance. It was tens of thousands of feet away, but due to the height it was very noticeable. The barricade was not just solid, but it was also induced with energy from the crystals that used to be mined hundreds of years ago, which was the reason it was currently glowing up. The participants also noticed other spacecraft that looked similar to the ones they were currently boarding, heading towards the same direction. As you have been given information about the final phase location, I shall now brief you on how the final phase is going to take place, Gradier Xanatus continued. All participants will be dropped off inside the barricade from thousands of feet above. When you get in, your primary objective is to survive the next 4 days. It was truly similar to what they thought it would be. At this moment, hundreds of spacecraft had arrived before the tall barricade that surrounded the entire ruins. They hovered above the ruins. From above, it could be seen that the barricade was square-shaped, and the space within the square was almost half of an entire city. However, the structure that could be seen within was quite small. It was only as big as a small bungalow building. It was a building, but it only led to the underground ruins. There was no space for living within or anything like that. The participants could see the large opening held by countless pillars that led underground from their current altitude. Everyone figured that the underground ruins was probably very vast underground, which was the reason for the wide space within the barricades. Chapter 230. The participants could see the large opening held by countless pillars that led underground from their current altitude. Everyone figured that the underground ruins were probably very vast. This was the reason for the wide space within the barricades. Your secondary objective is to retrieve as many grandstones as you can, Gradier Xanatus stated. The participants were confused by the sudden mention of a secondary objective and grandstones. Before they could start throwing questions around, Gradier Zanatus began explaining. The MBO had placed some energy shards called the Grand Stones inside the Kaskia ruins before the participants arrived. The ruins no longer had any energy crystals inside, so they had to put these ones in manually. Gradier Zanatus explained that the participants were to gather as many as they could while trying to survive. Gathering these shards would also increase their points. The participants were excited when they heard this. Those that had lesser points saw this as a turning point since, according to Gradier Zanatus' words, the shards were scattered in different places across the ruins. They felt that if they were lucky enough, they could find these stones before others. While they were immersed in their wild thoughts, Gradier Zanatus told them that numerous mixed breeds would also be coming for the shards the moment they sensed it. This dampened some of them as they thought about how they would have to deal with mixed breeds while trying to get the shards. Team up if you have. Survival is the ultimate goal. However, if you can't deal with a bunch of weakened criminals and low-level mixed breeds, then you're not meant to be here. Gradier Zanatus voiced out, "Drop will be initiated in 1 minute. Pick up your electronic survival bag." Gradier Zanatus stated, "SHHHSSHH. SHHHSSHH." The ceiling of the aircraft opened and a backpack was revealed. The participants picked up the backpack and wore it. After jumping from the aircraft, your electronic backpack will automatically power on and fly you down. After that, the nitro power will be cut off, so none of you will be able to escape using it, Gradier Zanatus explained. There are some tools kept inside for your usage. Properly make use of them. We will be watching. Immediately after saying this, Gradier Zanatus' holographic form disappeared. Initiating drop in 39 seconds, 38, 37, 36, 35, 34. The participants were on their toes as the AI counted down. They kept staring at the ruins below, wondering how the internal structure underneath would look. "Are you ready?" Gustav asked Angie beside him. "HNM," she nodded with a smile on her face. "Hey, rival, you want to ask me?" "No fair." Ria, who was sitting 3 places to the left side of Gustav, shouted out. "I don't care," Gustav muttered without even turning to stare at him. "Ek, you." Ria pointed at Gustav with a disgruntled look. "Stop spitting on my face, you loud-mouthed idiot." Glade, who was seated on Ria's right, voiced out with a repressed look. "Hey, who?" Just as Ria wanted to retort, the last countdown reverberated inside the spacecraft. 1. Opening hatch. Immediately after those words were voiced out, the floor of the aircraft opened up. Fwishishism. The wind blew into the aircraft through the opening underneath their bodies. Engage drop. This was the last announcement they heard from the AI before their seats were pulled from underneath them and folded into a small cube. Kairar. Arferg. Keek. Aha. Most of the participants screamed out as they fell from underneath the aircraft. Fwishas. Numerous bodies could be seen dropping from the sky towards the ruins below. They were falling from a height of over 10,000 feet. So it was enough to give anyone anxiety, even though they knew the backpack would save them. Participants that had bloodlines that gave them a flight ability were unable to activate it. Other participants tried activating their bloodlines also and found out that they couldn't. As Gustav fell, he stared at the structure that was thousands of feet below, slowly becoming bigger and bigger in his sight. The wind blew his hair backward, making him look extremely cool. He was among the few participants without a hint of fear on their faces. He turned his head to the left side and noticed Angie's frightened look. He stretched out his hand and grabbed onto hers. Angie turned to stare at him and smiled. The frightened expression on her face was gone. Ugh, a sore sight to see indeed. Ria voiced out from the side and placed both of his hands by his sides before diving forward. Angie and Gustav ignored him, of course, and focused on the structure below as they descended. Rhea started descending quicker than others. Some of the participants saw his action and also did the same. They didn't want to give Rhea the chance of getting the ruins before they did because of the grandstones. When they were 2,000 feet away from the ground, the engine in the backpacks activated. Tush! Tush! Blue fires ejected from the backpacks, and the participants stopped falling loosely. The backpack controlled their fall and started flying them towards different parts of the environment around the structure beneath. Fwish! Fwish! The backpacks separated the participants, taking some towards the north area and some towards the south. They became scattered around, and in a few seconds, everyone landed. At that instant, the participants regained their abilities and started heading towards the entrance ahead. Gustav was dropped at the far east of the entrance. Angie and the others had been separated from him, and the structure was now thousands of feet away from his position. Does the MBO always have to make everything a hassle? Gustav sighed internally as he looked around him. Some participants were also dropped not far away from his position, but he had never seen these ones before, so he assumed they were from other aircraft, which also meant they were from other cities. Oh well, this is good too. I prefer working alone, Gustav said internally as he dashed towards the structure ahead. Dash has been activated. Chapter 231. Oh well, this is good too. I prefer working alone, Gustav said internally as he dashed towards the structure ahead. Dash has been activated. Fwash! Gustav moved forward quickly, surpassing some participants in a matter of seconds. Some participants that were dropped closer to the entrance of the underground ruins had almost gotten there. From above, it looked like a swarm of ants was coming from every direction towards the same location, which was the structure that housed the entrance. There were thousands of participants heading towards the entrance, which was a large crowd. Even the entrance was quite big. Fortunately for them, the electronic backpack they carried had been spaced and separated, so the participants wouldn't struggle to pass through the entrance at the same time. After running for 30 seconds, Gustav was finally a few feet away from getting to the structure that housed the entrance. At this time, some participants had gone in, while some were also arriving at the entrance the same time he did. Swish! Being the fastest among the ones that were just arriving, Gustav dashed past them and went into the structure. The place was dimly lit with pillars that resembled rocks connecting the ground to the ceiling. The passageway that led underground had stairs constructed within and lamp-like lights that could be seen on the side of both walls as the participants climbed down. The passageway was so big and wide that it could contain up to 50 people moving side by side. Gustav looked around as he moved through the passageway, trying to see if he could identify a familiar person. However, since there was none, he kept moving. Angie knew him all too well to understand that there was no way he'd wait at the entrance or expect her to do something like that. They both knew that they were to continue with the test, since that took priority, unless they somehow found each other during it. Participants were running down the stairs with as much speed as they could muster, since everyone wanted to be the first to find grandstones. Fwish! Gustav dashed past lots of them with ease, causing them to push their speeds to the limit in order to try and gain ground. Just how deep does this thing go? Even after crossing more down 1,000 stairs, Gustav still hadn't gotten to the bottom. At the moment, he had surpassed lots of participants that had arrived before him and was only behind about 80 participants. Still, a multitude of them was swarming in from behind. Bam! Bam! Bang! Boom! Gustav could hear sounds of fighting coming from down ahead on the stairs. Dash! I will cut down anyone that tries to hinder me from going in first. Dash, you bastard! I'll blast you down. Dash! Out of my way, mongrels! Dash! Why don't we just work together instead? Loud voices could be heard coming from up ahead. As Gustav approached, he could see some participants ahead slowing down due to the disturbance. Dash, get the fuck out of the way, you retard. Dash, such vulgar manner of speech for a young girl like yourself. It'll cut off your tongue. Dash, you wench. Even before arriving at the source of the main disturbance, another one had been created a few steps in front of Gustav. A small-sized, cute-looking girl around 411 with indigo-colored hair was engaging a 65 tall, slim, teenage boy with 7 slithery tongues shooting out of his mouth. A crowd was already forming here due to this. Swai, swai. 2 tongues shot towards the girl with speed as the tip expanded. Sheik, sheik. Thorns grew out of the tongues, and with the speed at which they were moving, it looked like they'd pierced through the small girl before she was able to dodge. Grab. The girl grabbed hold of both tongues with a look of anguish, stopping them from moving any further. Let's see whose tongues are going to be cut off, she voiced out as her long hair floated upwards. Swaying. Both tongues were mysteriously sliced into multiple parts. Kairar. The boy screamed out as blood spurted out of the cuts. Just as the girl was about to throw the disconnected parts of the tongues away, she noticed a figure jumping over her head. Everyone turned to stare up after noticing the figure, who happened to be Gustav. Sweei. He traveled more than 100 steps in the air, crossing over 30 participants at once. Hold it, right there, you. Do you think I'll let you just surpass me like that? The girl shouted and threw the severed tongues away before dashing forward at full speed after Gustav. Gustav landed in front, where he could see participants clustered together at a particular spot 40 steps further. They wanted to move forward, but they didn't have the guts to go through due to the battle going on in front. Blast! 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 Attacks were slamming into the walls on the sides and the ceilings, and no one wanted to enter the crossfire. From behind, the small girl with indigo-colored hair was already catching up to Gustav due to her speed, which was almost a match for Dash. Just as Gustav was looking for a way forward, since he didn't want to engage in the nonsensical battle going on in front, a dark-skinned boy who was about 6 feet tall with bushy afro hair phased out of the ground in front of him. Swin. He turned around to stare at the back and noticed Gustav a few steps behind. He smiled and nodded before turning to look at the front again. Oh boy, it's a big commotion out there, he muttered after noticing the battle up front. Tap, tap. He tapped his feet on the stairs twice, and a blue vortex appeared below him and swallowed him up. The next thing Gustav heard was, Ah, you bastards, someone has gone up ahead. Dash, I can't waste any more time playing with you fools. Dash, I'm off. I have to chase after that guy. Chapter 232. The crowd ahead dispersed, and everyone started running down the stairs again. What an amazing bloodline. So convenient, this would be the perfect place for doing that. Gustav could already guess that the boy he had just seen phase through the ground must have been responsible for stopping the battle. Did you think you could be faster than me? Gustav heard a thin, feminine voice behind him. The small-sized girl had caught up, but just as she was about to reach Gustav's left, Dash has been activated. Swish! Gustav bolted forward with a higher speed than hers, leaving a gap of plenty stairs between them in a matter of seconds. Huh. The girl voiced out with shock, but in the next second, she also increased her movement speed. I will not let these weaklings throw me off course. She voiced out while surpassing a good number of participants, also in a few seconds. Why does this person remind me so much of someone? Gustav questioned internally with an expression of annoyance. The image of a spiky-haired, orange kid came to his mind. Humph. Gustav dashed forward faster also, and started surpassing the participants in front. Dash, hey! Get back! Dash, damn, he overtook me! Dash, who the hell is that? Swoosh! In about 30 seconds, Gustav had even surpassed some of the participants in a brawl earlier. He was already closing in on the last three ahead who were behind the dark-skinned boy sporting an afro. Swoosh! One of them swung his left arm towards Gustav, who was approaching from the side. Twy, twy, twy. Glowing, small spikes flew out of his arm towards Gustav, who was only 2 feet away. At that close proximity, it would be impossible to dodge. However, to his surprise, Gustav leaped upwards and landed 50 stairs ahead. The spikes ended up piercing into 2 participants behind who missed it because of its size and speed. Boom! Boom! It exploded in their bodies, causing larger holes to appear in spots pierced with blood oozing out. You! The participant shouted out while pointing at Gustav, but to his surprise, he saw Gustav pass the remaining 2 with just as much ease. Even though they also tried to attack him, he was able to dodge all their attacks. Pa! 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 Gustav ran across the wall on the left for several feet. Trup! 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 The energy blasts being shot towards him slammed into the wall behind him repeatedly. Bam! He landed in front and dashed forward again. At this point, only the kid with bushy afro hair was in front of him. Also, the structure of the underground ruins was being revealed to them since they were close to reaching the end of the stairs. Gustav could see rough-looking walls and a lot of rocks protruding from the ceiling area. Some of them had big holes. Even though there were lights placed on the walls, the place still looked kind of dim. The boy with afro hair phased into the ground once more and arrived at the bottom of the stairs. He looked around and quickly turned towards the left. Swish! Gustav also dashed downwards with immense speed, and in about 5 seconds he also reached the bottom of the stairs. Gustav could see that these walls separated the routes. There were many routes that led to where no one knows. Even behind them, towards the left and right, some routes led to different places. Pointy yellowish rocks were almost everywhere, protruding from the walls, grounds, and even the ceiling, which was thousands of feet high. Gustav felt strange energy around the place the instant he got to the bottom of the stairs. This must be it. Even though there are no more energy crystals here, it's still very potent. Gustav remembered something mentioned in the aircraft. Underground ruins like this were where energy crystals were mined. These crystals emitted a certain kind of energy that is harmful to normal people, except they were mixed bloods or powerful beings. His birth father was also an energy miner, so Gustav already knew about it. Still, he had never been to an underground energy mining facility before, so he had no idea how powerful the energy was. Now that he was sensing it, he realized that he wouldn't withstand this harmful energy if he wasn't a Zulu-ranked mixed blood. He now understood the reason for the MBO Zulu-ranked requirement for participating in the test. Gustav also realized something. This must be the reason why even though a person is a brilliant scientist, they would still need to have a good bloodline. His reason for thinking this way was that experimentation of different kinds was done with energy crystals in this age. Breakthroughs in different research areas also came from using the crystals. If a person wanted to experiment with an energy crystal without being at least a Zulu-ranked mixed blood would be harmed upon coming into close proximity to the crystal. This was why Gustav couldn't even become a scientist, even if he wanted to back then when his bloodline was still weak. Gaitra! 2 loud roars brought Gustav out of his reverie. The other participants closing in behind on the stairs also heard that and paused their footsteps abruptly. Gustav turned towards the right. He noticed the silhouette of a large creature on 4s walking out of the 3rd passageways. The second roar came from the left, so Gustav turned to look at that side too and noticed the afro-haired kid several hundred feet away standing in front of a creature on 4s. Looks like they already sensed our presence, Gustav said internally as he braced himself for a fight. Only mixed breeds that are level 7 and beyond can sense the presence of living things. These mixed breeds are more powerful than a Step 1 cereal ranked. Gustav analyzed this information with speed. The one on the right or the one on the left? Gustav contemplated. The one on the left is farther, and since there's someone standing before it, it would still take some time for it to get here. The one on the right is not being delayed by anyone, so it will get here soon, and the participants will have to engage it. If I fight with others, I can't get what I want, but if it's just with him. In less than a second, Gustav had already thought about this. He made his decision almost instantly and dashed towards the left. Swish! When the mixed breeds coming from the right saw him running, it also dashed forward. Gustav had already gone several hundred feet away from his initial position in a few seconds. So when the mixed breed arrived at where he was previously, it noticed the participants coming down from the stairs. It growled again, causing furious winds to blow across the place. The participants stared at the creature. It was a 13-foot-tall, fox-looking mixed breed with green fur and a massive black horn on its forehead. Its claws were golden in color and looked so sharp that the participants started imagining how it would easily slice through flesh. As the mixed breed noticed them, it raised its body up and stood on its two hind legs while widening its mouth and running towards them. The participants, knowing that they had no choice but to face it, braced themselves and also dashed forward while activating their bloodlines. Gustav arrived before the afro-haired kid and the mixed breed who had already started engaging each other. It was a black-scaled, mammoth-looking mixed breed with 4 heads and 8 tusks. It was even larger than the mixed breeds the participants behind were currently facing. Its heads were positioned so that they formed a circle with a hole in the middle. Surprisingly, this type of mixed breed mammoth had a neck. Swee-eye! The boy dodged a wave-like attack by phasing through the ground and coming out of the wall on the right. Sprint has been activated. Swish! Gustav's speed increased exponentially as he dashed head-on into the mixed breed and threw out his fist towards the side of its belly. Bang! Gustav landed a clean hit on the mixed breed, which was distracted due to the other kid. Swoo! Bam! The creature was catapulted from its position by the force of the punch and slammed into the wall on the left about 50 feet away. One of its tusks brushed against the wall intensely due to this and cracked at the tip. The creature roared with anger as it picked itself up like it was unaffected and dashed towards Gustav with animosity. Chapter 233. The creature roared with anger as it picked itself up like it was unaffected and dashed towards Gustav with animosity. Did he just send it flying with one punch? The kid with the bushy afro hair wondered after witnessing Gustav's first hit. Swish! Gustav leaped upwards and spun in the air, dodging the charge of the mixed breed. But while he was still in midair, the mixed breed's tail suddenly extended outwards towards Gustav's leg. The kid with bushy afro hair, standing in a horizontal position on a pillar-like rock towards the side, took action when he noticed that his body was in a horizontal position all this time, and his legs were partially sunk into the blue vortex on the wall. Variu! This time he sunk in completely and appeared between Gustav and the tail. He started separating his palms that were joined together. The moment both palms separated, a small vortex could be seen within. Movement seemed slow, but everything was happening in very fast motion. The tail shot into the small vortex and appeared inside the wall he was standing on previously. It had pierced into the wall far towards the left due to the vortex, teleporting it over there. Due to the speed at which it was moving, its tail had pierced deep into the wall and it was unable to pull it back immediately. Gustav, who was about to perform an attack, landed and slid backward by a few feet. He teleported half of its tail over to the other side. Gustav could see two vortexes. One was on the left side where a pillar-like wall was located, and the tip of the mixed-breed tail was piercing out of it, while the other vortex was in between the palm of the afro-haired kid that had teleported to save him. While the boy was descending from the air, he started closing his palms together once again. Pa! His palms made a clapping sound as they collided, which also caused the vortex to shrink and disappear. KRRHHKKKK. The tail of the mixed breed was divided into two halves because of this, and green blood started spurting out of the cuts. GRRHHHHRRHHHH. The mixed breed growled in pain after its tail was severed in two. It turned around and saw the other half lodged into the wall on the left side. The afro-haired boy also landed and moved a few steps backward. He stood beside Gustav, and they both stared at the mixed breed which had started charging furiously towards them. No words were said between them before they charged out again. The afro-haired boy sank into the ground again and phased out of the other side of the ground behind the mixed breed, while Gustav arched his arm backward and clenched his fist so tight that they made popping sounds. GRRHHHHRRHHHH. As Gustav arrived in front of the mixed breed again, he launched his fist towards the head on the right, while the other kid also arrived behind the mixed breed, started conjuring another vortex. Gustav's fist slammed into the first head, causing it to halt its approach, but the mixed breed also retaliated by using its head below. It opened its mouth wide and tried gnawing on Gustav's arm. Gustav's right arm was still outstretched, but the mixed breed didn't notice that the moment he sent out his right fist, his left fist had already been thrown out next. Gustav's left fist transformed into that of the mutated bull's and slammed forcefully into the mixed breed head on the left. Bam! The mixed breed's other mouth's teeth were only a few inches away from piercing Gustav's right arm when his left fist slammed into one of its head. It got catapulted backward as a loud, cracking sound rang out. Swee-eye! Blood ran down its head on the left. The boy behind had already opened up a large vortex. Swimmin'! The mixed breed was sent flying into the vortex. However, only half of its body was able to fit through because of the size. Shurum! The boy started joining his palms together again, trying to close the vortex with half of the mixed breed's body still in it. Gustav watched from the front and already understood what he was trying to do. That's one powerful ability. Gustav could see the mixed breed struggling to move out of the vortex, but it was proving difficult. However, it would seem that closing this vortex, just as he had closed the other, was easier said than done. Sweat started appearing on the forehead of the afro-haired kid as he pushed his palms closer to one another. GRRHHHHRRHHHH. The mixed breed growled in pain as cracking sounds started ringing out since the vortex was shrinking. Its bones were slowly getting crushed. All of a sudden, its 6 eyes glowed red, and it started increasing in size. What's happening? The afro-haired kid could feel his vortex being forcefully enlarged. It growled again and suddenly pulled itself out of the shrinking vortex. The moment it pulled its body out of it, it turned around with immense speed and dashed towards the afro-haired kid. The kid who hadn't wrapped his head around the current development was taken by surprise and couldn't react in time when the mixed breed arrived in front of him. Sprint has been activated just as the 8 tusks of the mixed breed were about to pierce through his body. Gustav suddenly appeared on the left side of the creature. His left and right arms had been transformed into that of the mutated bull and were coated in milky light as he threw them out repeatedly. Bam! 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 Gustav threw out 6 consecutive punches in the span of 2 seconds to 3 heads of the mixed breed. 2 punches landed on each head, causing them to burst open as the mixed breed was sent flying towards the side with blood spurting out of its heads like a fountain. Bring it back here. Gustav shouted out to the afro-haired kid, who was currently still in a daze. He quickly snapped out of it and made a vortex appear behind the mixed breed, who was currently still being launched backward due to the force of the punches. Chapter 234. Triac. The mixed breed got sucked in and appeared right in front of Gustav again. Bang, 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 bang. Gustav threw out punches consecutively towards the body of the mixed breed again. Different parts of its body got blasted open as Gustav's punches sent it flying again. Gustav turned to stare at the afro-haired kid and nodded. The kid understood and did the same thing again. Triac. Swimmin'. The mixed breed was sucked in and appeared in front of Gustav again, only to receive another round of punches. This action played out repeatedly for more than 3 minutes before the mixed breed finally breathed its last. Plop! Its body landed on the ground 50 feet away this time, since no vortex was opened up. From the start till finish, the mixed breed could not touch a single hair on their body due to the duo's perfect coordination. Even though it went berserk and its strength increased, it was still unable to fight against them properly. You have killed a level 10 abominable mammoth mixed breed. Plus 20,000 EXP. Good job, I'm taking the body, Gustav voiced out and walked towards the corpse of the mixed breed after seeing the system notification. He was glad this kid was around. If not, it wouldn't have been easy to deal with the mixed breed after it went berserk. Incapacitating it and letting it receive beatings without it being able to fight back was what made it easier to deal with. No problem, the dark-skinned, afro-haired kid replied and stared at Gustav as he approached the corpse. Gustav brought out a button from underneath his sleeves and extended it towards the corpse. Zing! The corpse of the mixed breed disappeared with a flash of bright blue light. M.E.E. The afro-haired kid introduced himself as he approached Gustav. What about you? He asked while standing behind him. Gustav answered while turning around. Can we work together? E.E. proposed. No, I'm not a fan of moving in groups, Gustav responded bluntly while turning around to leave. E.'s face showed a disappointed look after hearing that, but he didn't want to push it. All right, but if we do meet somewhere again within the ruins, let's collaborate again, just like we did here. E smiled while walking towards Gustav. Gustav paused his footsteps ahead and turned around once again. His ability would be a very good one to steal, but he seems genuine, so I won't do that. Too bad I can't tell him to come with me since he'll end up seeing things he's not supposed to, Gustav said internally while scrutinizing him. All right, Gustav answered. E.E. smiled and stretched out his hand. Then it's a deal, he proposed. Gustav also reached out his hand and shook that of E before turning around and dashing forward. Swish! In a few seconds, he had disappeared far into the dimly lit passageway ahead. Just as Gustav left, the participants on the other side had already slain the mixed breed. The girl with indigo-colored hair had golden-colored blood all over her body as she held onto the fox-like head of the mixed breed. Even though the head was the size of half her body, she was able to lift it with just a single hand. Ha ha ha. She laughed like a crazed maniac and threw the head forward. Plop, 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 plop. The head rolled down the stairs, and blood oozed out of it, causing a long trail of blood to be formed on the stairs. She turned to look behind her and noticed the other participants panting heavily. Some of them even had injuries on their bodies. About 20 of them had assisted in killing the mixed breed. Still, she was the one who landed the final attack that decapitated the beast. Even though the rest had tried, they were unable to cause so much damage like she did. You're all weaklings. Ha ha ha. So long, losers. She voiced out while staring at them before turning back around and dashing down the rest of the stairs. Those two went that way. Humph. She voiced out with a disgruntled look and turned to head left. Swoosh! She was also moving quickly and had covered over 100 feet in a second. She arrived at the spot where the battle between Gustav, EE, and the mixed breed had taken place. She noticed the green bloodstains on the ground. Looks like they had a battle here, she muttered. She noticed no red bloodstains, and they instantly realized that they must have defeated the mixed breed they came into contact with. Those two are definitely strong, being able to handle a level 10 mixed breed on their own. But I'm stronger. Her hair floated upwards as she spoke. Now, which way to follow? She could see different ways on the right, left in front of her, separated by the rock-like walls. She turned towards her left and dashed into the second passageway on the left side. Swish! Other participants at the moment were arriving at the bottom of the stairs and started separating into different directions. Some went right, some left, and others moved forward. There were hundreds of passageways on every side, and no one knew where they led to. After about an hour had gone by, every single participant had managed to make it into the underground ruins and was currently exploring for the grand stones. Battles occurred in random locations, but the participants were able to deal with the mixed breeds they encountered at the moment because most of them were moving in groups. Back at the stairway area where all the participants passed through, a silhouette phased out of a pillar-like rock in front of the stairways. Hee, so many fresh meat. A slurping sound reverberated across the place as an eerie voice rang out. What a time to be alive. I will enjoy myself to the fullest. The silhouette turned towards the left and started moving in the direction of the last group that came in. Chapter 235. What a time to be alive. I will enjoy myself to the fullest. The silhouette turned towards the left and started moving in the direction of the last group that came in. In an unknown part of the ruins, several weird-looking creatures that didn't look like mixed breeds started appearing out of the woodworks after sensing the presence of intruders in their domain. Some looked humanoid while others were nothing like humans. Skkrrhhh. A loud, sharp sound echoed in a dark place where a rock was positioned within a large hole on a massive wall. This may finally be my chance to get out of this place. A voice responded from the circular rock. In another part of the ruins, Gustav arrived at a place where small housing structures constructed from rocks could be seen. This was an open area where walls and passageways could not be seen. Only the ceiling area had pointy rocks protruding from them and some pillar-like rocks that extended from the top to bottom. Apart from that, the area was pretty cleared up, unlike the places he had been passing through. Overall, the area was still dimly lit. However, due to the spaciousness, it was a little bit brighter than other areas. Step, 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 step. 7 small houses built from the rock fragments were underneath the ruins. As Gustav moved forward slowly, he noticed that some of 3 small houses were built on the wall surface at the far edges of the area. It was as if the usual many pointy rocks that extended from the ceiling to the ground had been cleared up to build these structures. Gustav sensed movement thousands of feet away from where the first small house could be seen. God eyes have been activated. Just as expected, the houses belonged to convicts. Gustav instantly became on the alert moment. He saw through the house in front. Hiya! One of them has arrived. A loud masculine voice was heard coming from the house in front. Step! 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 Gustav had already paused his footsteps after noticing this figure, so the sound of footsteps was coming from this particular figure. It sounded heavier than Gustav's footsteps. Swidge! The leaves covering the entrance shifted, and a large, humanoid figure came through it. This person was so large that he was as tall as the house he stayed in. He had a triangular-shaped green head with one large black eye. He had no mouth, neither did he have a nose. His body resembled that of an ape with whitish furs. Gustav's current height was approximately half of his. Not only was he tall, but his figure was huge. Step! 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 His steps were extremely loud and got louder as he approached Gustav. He isn't a mixed blood. Gustav could see the difference between his energy and that of mixed blood since God's eyes were still activated. Since he also isn't a mixed breed, that means he's an alien. Gustav instantly came to a realization as his guard was raised up once again. Host has made contact with Arcanade species. Language translation isn't needed since species is currently using a language that Host can understand. The system notifications that popped up in his line of sight further confirmed his speculation. I have no idea how the power levels of aliens are. I literally have no knowledge of them, and I don't know what to expect. I should prepare to use all my strength just in case. Just as Gustav was preparing himself for a fight, he sensed movement from up ahead again. Step, 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 step. Creatures similar to the one walking towards Gustav walked out of other similar houses. They were shorter than the one closest to Gustav and also had different body proportions. However, they literally looked the same. They moved towards the largest and stood on his sides and behind him. 7 of them were now walking towards Gustav. This doesn't look good. Once I trade blows with them, I'll know if I can win. If I can't, I'll have to combine dash and sprint to get out of here. Gustav's body started transforming as he made this decision in his mind. In the process of channeling his genetic transformation, energy container, and atomic disintegration bloodlines, the 7 creatures in front of him paused in their tracks. Did you guys sense that? The largest creature in their midst spoke. Lord Guara, are you talking about the energy coming from that kid? One of them asked for the side. What else do you think I'm talking about, idiot? He answered with a slightly annoyed tone. Gustav, who was still channeling his bloodlines, wondered why they had stopped moving. Nevertheless, he still kept channeling his bloodlines. His body had bloated, becoming more than 7 feet in height. 3 inches tusks grew out of his thighs as they became very muscular. Long, sharp claws and tusks grew out of his toes and his right arm. His left arm became red in color with long, sharp claws coated in silver-colored energy. But even with his current height, he was still shorter than they were. Oh, wait, great subparallel being. We do not wish to go against you. The largest creature in their midst voiced out before Gustav could charge into them. Wait, what? The instant that statement was mentioned, Gustav's mind went back to what he always saw on the system panel. Subparallel being. My class. Gustav instantly remembered this as the words in front of the class when the system displayed his stats. What do you mean? Gustav asked while slowly transforming back into his usual self. He could sense that their hostility instantly disappeared after witnessing his transformation. We do not wish to fight against you, the creature replied again. Why? What made you change your minds, and why did you mention the words? Subparallel being. Gustav asked in quick succession. Because you're a subparallel being and we can't go against you, the large creature answered again. Chapter 236. Because you're a subparallel being and we can't go against you, the large creature answered again. What does that even mean? Gustav asked with a look of confusion. It means you're a subparallel being. He answered once again. Gustav had the urge to face bomb. Am I speaking to another idiot? He wondered internally. Can we talk over at my house? The large creature proposed, while politely gesturing for Gustav to head over. How is that even a house? Gustav said internally as he stared at the poorly built structure. Well, I can't blame them. This is a prison after all. Gustav started walking towards the house. The others also turned around to walk towards there as Gustav reached their position. Gustav still had his guard up, just in case. As he entered the house with 3 of these creatures, the rest remained outside. The interior of the house wasn't bad, but it also wasn't anything special. Some clothes were spread on the ground. There were no seats except for a small round rock placed in the center of the place. The largest amongst them walked towards the rock, lifted it, and dropped it in front of Gustav. "Please sit," he requested. Gustav proceeded to sit on the rock, while the rest of them sat on the ground in front of him. "I am known as Guara, and these are my subordinates." Guara first introduced himself. Gustav nodded in response, but didn't tell them his name. "Oh, great subparallel being, what brings you here? How are you among the little ones that were sent here?" he asked. "First, tell me what a subparallel being is," Gustav asked while raising one eyebrow up. The three seated in front of him stared at each other with looks of confusion on their faces. "As you wish, great one," he replied. Gustav felt he was going to get a headache from the way they turned respectful. He felt really uncomfortable hearing their manner of speaking. Still, he decided to perk his ears up and listen for the time being. All across galaxies, there are 5 stages that are known as cosmic superiority. Guara started with this. These 5 stages can only be achieved by special beings all across galaxies that are destined to be powerful. Only 1 in a trillion beings manage to reach any of these stages. Even if a being worked hard to gain strength and eventually becomes very powerful, they still might not unlock any of these stages since they're only randomly unlocked. These 5 stages are subparallel, parallel, transdimension, polar interdimension, and lastly, and also the most powerful, interomniscience. When he got to this point, he paused for a bit. Subparallel is the weakest. However, there are feats that being a person who has achieved cosmic superiority grants you when journeying across the universe. Guara continued. Beings that have achieved cosmic superiority have a certain kind of ability called Yarki. This ability grants them the power to make beings within a certain range of strength submit to them. Guara explained, "Even when I used to be the great and notorious Guara, known across numerous planets for my strength and feats, I never achieved cosmic superiority. I guess it never chose me, haha." He laughed gently with a ridiculing expression. "Even though we have been weakened because we tried messing with the wrong planets, we're still more powerful than you are physically. However, if you were to use your Yarki, we will be unable to touch a single hair on your head." Guara stopped explaining at this point. Gustav had a look of contemplation as he digested everything Guara had said. So it turns out that this was the case. Cosmic superiority. "But how do I make use of this Yarki?" he mentioned. "The system never gave me a hint. The class was only unlocked once I reached level 20. Also, I need to know what level of power will be affected by subparallel beings' Yarki. However, I'm sure their power level system is different from that of mixed bloods. So how do I compare them?" Gustav's mind was plagued with these thoughts. "This Yarki, how do I activate it?" Gustav asked. "No idea. I have not achieved cosmic superiority, so there's no way for me to know." "Wait, how come you don't know how to activate your own power?" Guara asked. "Maybe you're mistaken, and I have not achieved cosmic superiority." Gustav decided to say this and observe the way they'd react. "Impossible. I can never mistake the energy of one. Because I once fell in battle to a subparallel being like you." Guara's face shone pain as he voiced out. Even though he didn't have a mouth nor a nose, Gustav could still figure out that there was pain in his voice when he mentioned that a while ago. The other 2 beside him also had their head down when he mentioned this. "Since I don't know how to make use of the power, why aren't you attacking me?" Gustav asked while raising one eyebrow again. "Haha, because we know better than to piss off a being that has achieved cosmic superiority. At such a young age, you have already achieved this, which is unheard of. The possibility of your cosmic stage increasing in the future is very high. Only a stupid person wouldn't want to make connections with you." Guara mouthed off while making the face of an ass kisser. "By the way, we never intended to kill you." According to those enforcers in your planets who came the other day, we were just to ruffle up anyone who approached this place to stop them from getting their hands on the stones placed in different spots around here. If we did that, our sentences would be reduced. However, we don't care about that anymore after meeting someone like you, Guara added. Enforcers? Stones? Gustav instantly came to a realization. He's referring to the MBO. Looks like they made deals with the inmates. Where are these stones that you mentioned? Gustav asked with a look of interest. Oh, follow me. I'll show you, Guara replied while standing up. Chapter 237. Where are these stones that you mentioned? Gustav asked with a look of interest. Oh, follow me. I'll show you, Guara replied while standing up. They moved out of the small structure and headed for different corners of the area. After about 10 minutes had gone by, Gustav had about 10 orange-colored, pinky-sized stones in his possession. They had a particular glowing dot at their center. They were so smooth that grabbing hold of them to uproot them from the walls was not an easy task. The Arcanades even had to break a piece of walls in some areas just to remove the stones. Gustav proceeded to keep the grand stones within his storage device and stared at the path ahead, leading to a passageway behind this area. You guys said the MBO made a deal with you all to ruffle up anyone who approached this area and stop them from getting the stones for your sentence here to be reduced. Gustav asked for confirmation. Guara and the others behind nodded in confirmation. Then, how long is your sentence? Gustav asked. Well, we've been here for about 20 years already, so we still got around 20 to 30. I'm bad with calculations, Orwa, Guara called out to his second in command, who was the second biggest after him. My lord, we have been here for 30 years, and we have only 5 years left, Orwa replied. We've been here for that long. Wait, we only have 5 years left? Then why the hell didn't you stop me from accepting those bastards' proposal? What gain would we get from helping them hold back those youngsters? Guara voiced out with a tone of annoyance. My lord, we did tell you. Guara interrupted Orwa before he could complete his statement. Shut up, you idiots. I'm the only one speaking, Mael. Death glare. Orwa quickly kept quiet the instant he noticed Guara's glare from the front. What exactly did y'all do to get a 35-year sentence? Gustav was quite surprised that they had been here for that long and hadn't lost their sanity. It had been about 3 hours since he arrived here with the others, and he was already starting to feel weird. He couldn't imagine staying underground without being able to leave for up to a year. Despite that, these bunch had been here for 30 years already. Haha! Well, we tried stealing something of great importance to your planet. Guara laughed lightly as he explained. If we had succeeded, we could have sold it to another planet and lived the rest of our lives in wealth and prosperity. However, us succeeding would have left your planet defenseless, giving other planets the opportunity of finally launching an attack against your planet. Without that thing, the chances of other planets successfully invading the Earth would be increased. Haha! We're lucky we didn't get the life imprisonment sentence, Guara explained and concluded with another light laughter. I wonder what that thing is. With that level of importance, they should truly have been imprisoned for longer since their success would have jeopardized the entire Earth. I wonder why they received a lighter punishment, Gustav wondered, forgetting that just a while ago he mentioned that their sentence was too high. Guara seemed to have guessed what Gustav was thinking about and proceeded to say, Those bastards look down on us. They knew we never stood a chance, so they're giving us such a small sentence knowing that we're harmless, and even if we tried it again, we wouldn't succeed. Gustav could sense the annoyance in his tone when speaking. He could already tell that he was referring to the MBO. I see, so 5 more years. Gustav figured that they must have learned the human language before coming to Earth for their operation. How did you guys manage to live for 30 years underneath this hole without losing your sanity? Gustav asked. Haha, As long as I have my subordinates, I can stay in this hole for up to 100 years. Guara replied with a burst of light laughter. Companions, eh? Gustav said internally while giving a low sigh. Our sentence is nothing compared to those who have been doomed to spend eternity in this hole due to their heinous crimes, Guara said with a depressed look. It was nice chatting with y'all. I'm leaving now, Gustav said while turning around to leave. Hold on. Great subparallel being, Guara called out to Gustav, who responded by turning around to listen. You have to be careful out there. As you're leaving our territory, you'll be meeting some other inmates who have been here longer than we have. Some of them have already lost their minds. So, even though they have been given the offer to ruffle you youngsters up and prevent you from securing more stones for their sentences to be reduced, due to their twisted minds, they will attack with the intention to kill, Guara warned. Gustav didn't need to be told this. He already knew that he'd be encountering crazy folks here and was prepared for it. Good thing the MBO did not plant cameras everywhere. I might finally be able to go all out for reasons unknown. Gustav could feel a rush of excitement from within when thinking about this. Although the Arcanades were truly stronger than he was, physically they had no idea that he had multiple bloodlines. Gustav suddenly remembered something Guara had just mentioned. Did you say territories? Yes, this is we, the Arcanades' territory, and we would fight a bitter battle to the death with any other species that try to trespass. Other creatures here also have their territories, which I am sure are places you need to visit to get more of those stones, Guara explained. After leaving here, you'll arrive in the territory of another. There are also many passageways that lead to different places that are inhabited. So finding the places where the stones are kept without a map might get you lost, Guara added. A map? True. Gustav's face shone realization as he remembered that his backpack had been strapped to his back all this time. I didn't even remember to check, Gustav said internally as he unhooked the bag from his back. Chapter 238. A map? True. Gustav's face shone realization as he remembered that he had a backpack strapped to his back all this time. I didn't even remember to check, Gustav said internally as he unhooked the bag from his back. He opened up the backpack and checked the contents within. There were fast foods that could be eaten on the go, some night kit to make a campfire, also a makeshift cube that had a retractable house inside. Gustav could see some more materials for survival inside, which made him surprised since he didn't expect the MBO to do this. After a few seconds more of checking, he finally noticed a small, pocket-sized device underneath, strapped to the left side of the backpack. Gustav grabbed hold of it and took it out of the bag. Tap! Troyan! A holographic map of the underground ruins was revealed right before his eyes. He could see the route that led back to the stairways that brought them here. He could also see passageways that connected to one another, leading to every place underground. The only problem was that the locations weren't marked. Can you mark out the territories of these creatures you mentioned? Gustav asked Guara. About 30 minutes later, Gustav was traveling through another passageway. He had a small, maniacal smile on his face as he stared at the device in his hand. The device displayed a map that had red spots in different areas. Only Gustav understood what the red spots meant. The next one should be right behind this passageway, Gustav said internally. I'm going to gather as many as I can before the day runs out. After that, the next step will be to find a good place to rest for the night, Gustav decided internally. Arcanades had told him they would have come with him if not for the fact that their sentences might be increased if they assist him. Even if their sentences were not increased, Gustav would still have preferred that they didn't follow him all around. But he did promise that when they were out, he would find a way to repay their help. So, this might not be the last time that they will be meeting. Gustav was still surprised that these inmates had made territories for themselves underneath the Kaskia ruins. The participants were mostly put in a tight spot because they had to look out for mixed breeds, aliens, and mixed bloods, the likes of which might no longer be sane. Swish! Gustav dashed out of the passageway and arrived in an area with hundreds of icicle-like rocks buried into the ground. The icicle-like rocks were pointing towards the ceiling, but they weren't tall enough to reach there. Surprisingly, when Gustav looked up, hundreds of feet above, a large creature was sleeping on the pointed tips of these icicle-like rocks. It looked like a round ball covered in greenish fur, but if one looked closely, one would see small legs and two heads protruding from the top and bottom of the creature. However, its heads and legs were not easily noticed compared to its massive size and ball-like shape. Host has made contact with a Kalapasol. That must be it. It's also an alien. Maybe I could get the grandstones without waking it, Gustav said internally, and activated Sprint along with Silent Steps. Sprint has been activated. Silent Steps have been activated. Swish! Gustav silently darted across the place, going from corner to corner to search for grandstones. The walls in this area were coated with icicle-like fragments. Looking from afar, it was like they were clothed by the thin fabric of icicle-like fragments. After searching for several minutes, Gustav still hadn't found anything. Since he was making use of Sprint, he was almost at his fastest, so he had checked every part of the walls in these areas more than 15 times. Still, he found nothing. Could they have been mistaken? Gustav wondered, but immediately banished the thought. Screw all. The creature above made a loud sound which was a bit similar to snoring, and flipped over to the side. Gustav raised his head up to stare at it. It had been lying on its back the entire time, so due to its size, it was covering a large portion of the ceiling from Gustav's point of view. However, the moment it flipped to the side, Gustav saw the part of the ceiling that had been blocked. On that part, small, shiny orange objects were embedded into it. So that's where they were all this time. The MBO is pretty cunning. They must have known where the creature likes to sleep. So they put it in a place where you'd wake the creature if you tried taking it. Gustav smirked while analyzing. He stared at the icicle-like rock in front of him and traced it to its tip. Every icicle-like rock around him happened to be among the ones the large creature was currently sleeping on. Gustav moved to the far edge of the space and found an icicle-like rock that wasn't connected to the body of the creature above. It looked thin from afar, but it was the size of 2 human adults' bodies on a closer look. Only the top was pointed. Clasp! Gustav grabbed hold of it and tried climbing. However, his hands slipped the moment he tried to pull himself up. GGRHHH. GGGRHH. Both Gustav's arms instantly enlarged in size, and dark red fur covered them as long, sharp claws protruded out of the tip of his fingers. Prywick! Prywick! Both Gustav's claws dug into the icicle-like rock, and he started climbing. Prywick! 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 Small sounds were made each time his claws pierced the icicle-like rock. This made him move slower than normal because he didn't want to wake the creature. After about a minute, Gustav was finally close to reaching the tip of the icicle-like rock. From his position, he could see the body of the large creature, which happened to be facing Gustav's direction. It was only about 15 feet away because its body covered a large portion of the tip of the icicle-like rocks. Gustav's claws pierced into a part of the icicle-like rock that was only 3 feet away from the tip and pulled himself up with force. Swish! His body traveled upwards with speed. Then, in midair, his right foot landed on the tip of the icicle-like rock. Gustav smirked as he stood on the icicle-like rock with one leg and looked around the place. Flicker! Flicker! Gustav heard the flickering sounds and stared at the creature ahead. Swin! The creature opened its 4 small green eyes and stared in the direction of Gustav with animosity. Sigh! I thought I was silent enough, Gustav said internally, while staring back into the eyes of the huge creature. He figured his claws piercing into the icicle, like rock, repeatedly had slowly brought the creature out of its slumber. Goo! The creature made a weird noise as it flipped its body over on the tip of the icicle-like rocks. Oh well, I still want to find out if I can take on the ability of aliens. So, this might not be so bad after all, Gustav said internally as he prepared to engage the creature. Chapter 239. He figured that his claws piercing into the icicle like rock repeatedly had slowly brought the creature out of its slumber. Goo! The creature made a weird noise as it flipped its body over on the tip of the icicle like rocks. Oh well, I still want to find out if I can take on the ability of aliens. So, this might not be so bad after all, Gustav said internally as he prepared to engage the creature. Goo! Go! It's been long since I tasted flesh. So you're finished, Earthling. Although the creature was still making that weird sound, Gustav could understand it clearly. Looks like the system will interpret every alien language to me, no matter where they come from, Gustav thought. Fwum! The massive circular creature suddenly leaped up and curled itself into a perfect circle where its head and legs couldn't be seen. It suddenly descended upon Gustav's location with speed. Obviously, it was trying to crush him with its body. Gustav practically had nowhere to run to since they were in midair, and he was currently standing on the top of a pointy rock with just 1 foot. The next rock in front was a few feet away, and so were the rest. Because of the way they were spaced and the size of the creature's body, he would need to move to the other end of the area in less than 2 seconds. However, it was currently impossible for him. Gustav turned towards the side and leaped towards the wall about 50 feet away from his left. Fwum! Tush! The instant his feet touched the wall, he pushed himself upwards with force. Thump! Gustav's body ascended with speed, but due to that action, the body of the creature missed him by a hairbreadth. Bang! The creature landed its body on the area where Gustav was a while ago. However, his body was so large that part of it was even touching the wall that Gustav had just used to push himself upwards. Gustav landed on the body of the creature and used its bounciness to catapult himself upwards again. Thump! It was like rubber, so it was quite easy for Gustav to reach the ceiling area of the area. Gustav arched his arm back, punched the ceiling area with force. Bang! Crumble! 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 Pieces of rocks started falling from the ceiling area after Gustav landed a massive hit on the ceiling. Grab! 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 While falling through the air, Gustav reached out his hand with super speed multiple times and grabbed onto 4 grandstones falling along with him. The creature below hadn't been expecting this action. It was unable to attack Gustav immediately after landing because of the rocks falling from the ceiling area. Although they were unable to harm it, Gustav had broken the surface of the ceiling with his fist. The resultant effect was a cloud of powder-like dust that disturbed the vision of the creature. Gustav quickly kept the stones as he landed on the tip of another icicle-like rock a few feet from the front of the creature. 6 more to go. Gustav stared the ceiling area on the east and could see some more grandstones embedded into its surface. KRRGHH. Gustav's body started swelling as he transformed. The creature in front still had a poor vision of the environment due to the dust particles still floating in the air. Still, it could pinpoint Gustav's particular direction. However, it didn't attack him immediately when he sensed the energy his body exuded, but the moment the dust cleared up. Swish! It noticed that Gustav had already appeared at its front, looking extremely menacing due to his transformation with his fist outstretched. Boom! Gustav's right fist slammed into the body of the creature. But surprisingly, something else happened. Thrun! Gustav's fist sank into the body of the creature and bounced back. Just as I thought, that's why it's able to sleep on the pointed tips of these rocks without suffering any issues, Gustav said internally before jumping backwards. Thump! As his body traveled backwards through the air, the large creature also leaped forward. Even with its body mass, it arrived in front of Gustav instantly. Bam! Its massive body collided with that of Gustav, sending him flying towards the far end of the space. Bang! Gustav's back slammed hard into the wall. Still, as he was traveling backwards earlier, the creature didn't let up and was already following him. The moment he slammed into the wall, the creature had arrived in front of him again, using its massive body to cover Gustav's entire line of sight. Thump! Gustav pushed himself forward quickly and arrived in front of the creature's body with his arms outstretched. He grabbed onto the body of the fast-moving creature and used it to push himself further upwards. Zwin! Gustav's body scaled over it due to that, dodging the creature, who still kept traveling forward with full force. Bang! It ended up slamming into the wall. As Gustav landed on the tip of another icicle-like rock in front, he raised his right arm, which was coated in silver-like energy, including the long, sharp claws. Sprint has been activated. Gustav leaped from tip to tip, unafraid of the height or falling to the ground, which happened to be 100 feet below. Swin! Before the creature could reposition itself, Gustav had already leaped forward and arrived in its front almost in an instant. Slash has been activated. Slash! Gustav's claws slashed out with intensity towards the body of the creature. The creature, who hadn't balanced itself, felt a sense of crisis, and something unexpected happened next. SHHRRKKKHH. Diamond-like coverings suddenly appeared across its body like scales. Clank! The instant Gustav's claws collided with it, they got bounced back. What? Gustav noticed that the hard covering that appeared on its body was similar to the icicle-like rocks protruding from the ground. It also looked similar to the layer of diamond-like silk covering the walls of this particular area. Not even atomic disintegration could pierce through. Gustav suddenly felt movement from behind him, just as he was about to slash at the body of the creature again. Chapter 240. Not even atomic disintegration could pierce through. Gustav suddenly felt movement from behind him, just as he was about to slash the body of the creature again. The movement of whatever was behind him was so fast that the instant he turned, it was already a few feet away from him. Push! The large icicle-like rock behind him had been uprooted from the ground and launched towards him. Gustav's senses had warned him of danger, but it was almost too late. Swish! Gustav moved to the side as fast as he could, but the large, pointy rock still stabbed into his left side. Priwick! 600 HP. Due to its large size, it couldn't penetrate thoroughly, so it ended up cutting a large chunk of his left ribs away. Splurt! Splurt! Blood jetted out of Gustav's side as he landed on the next icicle-like rock towards the side. He stared at the creature, who had turned its body to face Gustav's direction with one of the icicle-like rocks floating in front of it. Ugh! Gustav placed his palm on his left side, causing a loud spurting sound to ring out. His palm was drenched in blood instantly. I was careless. I need to be on the ground since it can control these rocks. Immediately this thought came to his mind. Gustav leaped down. Swish! Bam! He landed on the ground in a few seconds, causing more blood to spurt out of his injury, coating the ground. Gustav could feel the pain, but he wasn't focused on it. He didn't let it hinder his movement in any way, and even though it stung, he bore the pain. The large opening that was torn through his body on his left rib area was slowly starting to close up. Gustav stared at the creature, who happened to be staring at him back from up. The large icicle-like rock was still floating in front of it and pointing towards Gustav's direction from above. Swoon! 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 Suddenly the icicle-like rocks all around the vicinity started being uprooted from the ground by an invisible force. While that was happening, Gustav's entire body was also transforming. Black scales covered his chest and back area. This was a feature he got from the serpentine mixed breed. The tusks that had grown out of his thighs suddenly wrapped around his legs, transforming into some kind of protective covering. His skin turned sizzling hot, affecting the temperature around him. 10 invisible energy, orbs filled with energy, had merged into the space around him without the awareness of the creature. He looked extremely menacing right now. As the icicle-like rocks in the area arose from the ground and pointed towards him in midair, a purplish beam was also gathering in his mouth, which was wide open. Thwice. Thumb. He shot out the purplish beam at the same time the icicle-like rocks were hurled towards him. Zawinowin. The beam traveled with faster speed than the hurling rocks and slammed into the body of the creature. Bang! It got pushed back and slammed into the ceiling. Swish! At the same time it made contact, Gustav was already dashing across the ground, dodging the descent of the icicle-like rocks. Bam! 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 They started slamming into the ground, missing Gustav's figure as he dashed across the place. Swerve! 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 Gustav perfectly dodged every icicle-like rock. He dodged up to 20 of the icicle-like rocks, which had a length of over 1,000 feet. Combination has been activated. Dash plus sprint swoosh. Gustav's speed suddenly increased immensely as he dashed towards the icicle-like rocks that had protruded into the ground. Bang! 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 He clawed and punched at them, repeatedly shattering them in the process. Bang! 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 Atomic corrosion has been activated. Gustav activated one of the new skills he got when atomic disintegration got to Zulu rank. Any rock his fist encountered will slowly start to disintegrate into powder-like particles. Even though he wasn't able to blast them to pieces after punching them, they would later be disintegrated into nothing since he had made contact with them. The creature reorganized itself after slamming into the ceiling due to Gustav's beam. Even though it wasn't injured, it was still shaken up because the force was immense. It quickly controlled another pair of icicle-like rocks and sent them hurtling towards Gustav again. It couldn't go down to meet Gustav due to its massive body since the icicles were in the way. Gustav calculated the trajectory of the falling icicle-like rocks and squatted lightly. The muscles in his legs and thighs bulged immensely, and the ground below cracked a little from the way his feet pressed against the ground. Super jump has been activated. Thumb. Gustav leaped upwards in a diagonal format and kicked the first icicle-like rock he came into contact with. Swish! 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 Using that force, he traveled from rock to rock in a zig-zag-like format while moving upwards. Thumb. Due to the extremely fast speed, the creature was taken by surprise when it saw Gustav appear in its line of sight. There it is, Gustav said internally as his body ascended towards the head area of the creature that was slightly buried into its large body. The creature was unable to react in time before Gustav landed on its head area. Clench. Gustav grabbed onto the head and pulled it out of the body forcefully before throwing his leg at the closed-up mouth of the creature. Bam! The creature made a loud, painful noise as its mouth opened up and started calling back the icicle-like rocks. However, Gustav's next action surprised it. Troyan! 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 About 10 blue, glowing spherical orbs appeared around Gustav. Before the creature could understand what was going on, the orbs flew into its wide-open mouth. Swin! Gustav jumped back down the instant the orbs went in. He nicely dodged the icicle-like rocks that were flying back up as he said a word in his mind. Detonate. Chapter 241. Gustav jumped back down the instant the orbs went into the mouth of the large creature. He effortlessly dodged the icicle-like rocks that were sent flying back as a certain word formed in his mind. Detonate. Immediately after the thought came to his mind, the energy inside the orbs within the creature's body went haywire. Instantly, it was accompanied by the sound of a compressed but loud blast. Boom! The creature's body bloated immensely, and its skin cracked as light rays escaped from different parts of its body before it blasted apart. Plush! 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 Blood came pouring down like a waterfall as pieces of the creature's flesh were sent flying in all directions. As Gustav landed on the ground, a wave of the creature's blood poured down upon him, dyeing his entire figure in a green-colored liquid. Gustav quickly swerved towards the right, dodging a massive chunk of flesh that landed in his initial position. Plop! It was a continuous shower of blood for about 30 seconds. Gustav couldn't even raise his head to look up until the shower of blood was over. After it was done pouring, Gustav looked up and saw some pieces of flesh being held up by the tip of icicle-like rocks in different parts of the vicinity. The icicle-like rocks in the vicinity had now become scanty because of the destruction during the battle. However, some of them were still standing. Plop! The head of the creature rolled off from the tip of one of the icicle-like rocks and fell 7 feet in front of Gustav. Its mouth was still wide open, but its eyes had popped out of their sockets. Even with the massive size of its body, the Kilopiesol's head was only half Gustav's height. You have killed a Kilopiesol, plus 100,000 EXP. Goal completed. Defeat an alien life form, plus 20,000 credits. So many rewards for defeating this alien. Gustav stared at the system notifications as he walked towards the head of the creature. He understood why the rewards were so high. After all, this was the first time he fought a creature that put him in such a tough spot like this. His left ribs area still had a hole due to the successful sneak attack of the creature, although it had almost healed up completely. Gustav arrived in front of the head and squatted. He reached out his hand towards it. Let's see if this will work. Gustav's hand made contact with a particular spot on the head. Contact with Kilopiesol's corpse has been made. New system category created. Alien life forms. If host wishes to take the form of the Kilopiesol, several body parts need to be gathered. Gustav retracted his hand after seeing the system notification and started dashing across the place. He picked up as many body parts as he could and placed them beside the head. He did this severally until he gathered a pile of body parts half the height of a person. Gustav placed the creature's head on the pile of body parts, retracted his hand, and made contact again. Contact with Kilopiesol's corpse has been made. Does host wish to add form of Kilopiesol to the newly created category alien life forms? Yes/no. Gustav smiled as he saw the system notification. Yes, ___ in other parts of the underground ruins. Every group formed had faced one foe or another while traveling from one place to another. Most had faced mixed breeds, since the place was practically overrun by them. At every turn or area, there would always be mixed breeds. Sometimes the mixed breeds moved in groups, while others had territories where they stayed together. During the 5 hours that they had spent in here, a group was nearly wiped out due to running into a pack of mixed breeds. Luckily for them, these mixed breeds were the territorial types. Once the group managed to escape the range they considered their territory, they were safe. However, they had noticed that a person from their group was missing. Since they had almost lost their lives a while ago, the group was not willing to go back and face the mixed breeds again. So they ignored that and easily forgot about the person. Since the group was created randomly, they had no emotional attachment to one another, making it easier for them not to feel remorseful. Back in that territory, a silhouette phased through the wall while holding onto the decapitated head of a young girl. The girl had brown-colored hair and was obviously a beauty, but her eyes were extremely wide. Looking at the facial expression of the decapitated head, it was obvious that she went through something horrifying before her death. Slurp, slurp. Slurping sounds reverberated across the vicinity. The silhouette lifted the head that was still dripping with fresh blood towards its mouth area. Thanks for the meal, slurp. It voiced out as a wide opening appeared in the middle of its face. A wide set of white canine-like teeth was displayed. Each of its teeth was the length of an adult's palm. It pushed half of the head into its wide-open mouth before closing it heavily. Crunch! In an instant, the head was bitten into two halves, and blood along with brain matter squirted across the place. "Ah, delicious!" the creature muttered before munching away. Underscore, 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 a few kilometers away from the barricade covering the surroundings. A bungalow-sized facility could be seen outside the underground ruins. It didn't look anything special, but officers clothed in sets of dignified-looking uniforms could be seen surrounding it, armed with advanced weaponry. From time to time, convoys would arrive carrying a set of people who would get down and approach the building. Within the building, the internal structure was entirely different from what could be seen outside. Not only was it larger in size, but it also looked structurally advanced in every way. A rectangular table could be seen in the middle where a group of dignified-looking people sat around. Rays of light converged above the table, forming different holographic images that displayed several spots in the underground ruins. "Are you sure we can't see any deeper than this?" Chapter 242. Rays of light converged above the table, forming different holographic images that displayed several spots in the underground ruins. There were about 14 of them sitting around the table, and more empty seats were still around them due to the large size of the table. A familiar figure was among them. "Are you sure we can't see any deeper than this?" One of them asked from the side. "No, sire. The energy waves are more saturated in this environment, causing the disruption of transmission from the hidden cams." The man that had just spoken had a contemplative expression upon hearing the information the AI passed. "Looks like we won't be able to see that kid's battle," he muttered. "Great, Commander Cheyenne. Shouldn't we be more worried about the insatiable silhouette?" A feminine voice was heard from the other end of the table. "From what we have seen, a participant had fallen by his hand. How many more will fall?" Another masculine voice questioned. "Are you guys saying it should have been sealed?" Yet another voice, different from the others, was heard again. "That situation can only be handled if they work together. If they can't work together, then they don't belong in the MBO." While people around the table were voicing out their opinions, an officer knocked and came in from the door behind. "Sir Young Joe has arrived," he announced, and behind him a young man in a purple business suit walked in. Within the underground ruins, almost 10 hours had gone by. It was already evening time, and the participants knew they'd have to turn in for the night. So they began to look for places where they would be safe for the night. At this point in time, several groups had noticed that one or two of their teammates went missing when they were battling some mixed breeds. This became alarming when several groups met up and found out that they went through something similar. Several groups started sticking together due to this. However, this occurrence was only taking place in the southeastern part of the ruins. Groups in other parts hadn't faced this situation. Some had come in contact with inmates that they had to battle. In contrast, some had come into contact with inmates that didn't initialize violence upon noticing them. All in all, no one had lost their lives according to what the groups had seen. However, no one knew the fate of the missing participants. In a particular place in the southeastern part of the ruins, a girl with silver and pink-colored hair, with an innocent and beautiful look leading a group. Her athletic figure, along with her tight clothing highlighted her hips and front busts, made her look especially attractive. Among the rest of the group here, she seemed to stand out than others. "Angie, which passageway should we pick?" A short boy with long white dreadlocks covering his face asked from the side. Obviously, the girl was Angie. She happened to have formed a group of 7 with these participants after arriving in the ruins. The rest listened to her and practically saw her as the leader of the group because her opinions had brought them this far. Also, The way she used her ability when dealing with the mixed breeds they came into contact with garnered their respect. They were currently in a wide space filled with short, 2-foot-long pointy rocks protruding from the ground. Right in front of them were 4 large passageways. By now, the participants knew about the map. However, since there were no marked spots, that gave them a clue on what to expect from different locations. They were only using the map so they could find their way back in case anything happened. Angie checked the map and looked for the passageway that led to the northwest area of the ruins. She stared at the 3rd passageway, which happened to be the one, and gestured for everyone to go in. The rest nodded and followed her into the 3rd passageway. So far, we have each gotten 2 stones. We should move to another part to find more stones. This was Angie's thought and reason for picking this passageway. When the group had disappeared into the dimly lit passageway, a slurping sound reverberated across the area they had just left. Slurp, slurp, slurp. A silhouette phased out of one of the rocks and stared in the direction of the 3rd passageway. Hee, more fresh and delicious meat, it muttered while moving towards the 3rd passageway. In the eastern part of the ruins, within a large passageway, a bloodbath was ongoing. Slash, slash, Pryowick, Pryowick. Sounds of battle and blood being sprayed could be heard within. Gustav was currently engaging a group of mixed breeds with spider-like features but human-looking heads. Plop! Another of the creature's legs was severed, causing it to fall as Gustav spun around and slammed his right foot into the creature's face with a spinning force. Bang! His feet were currently massive due to him transforming them to that of a bloodwolf's. His leg slammed into the head of the creature, causing it to dislodge. It was sent flying and slammed into the wall on the other side before bursting apart. Gustav didn't wait for a second more. He had already dashed towards another one and was currently pulling its head from its body. You have killed a level 5 Oslyra arachnids mixed breed 10000 EXP. You have killed a level 5 Oslyra arachnids mixed breed 100. Exosystem notifications kept ringing in Gustav's head as he massacred the mixed breeds attacking him. After about 5 minutes more, the entire passageway was littered with piles of mixed breed corpses. Gustav walked forward, stepping on a pile of corpses and a river of blood that he spilled. Crunch! He stepped on a corpse's head as he walked forward, which burst into pieces. Even though the environment was nauseating and was filled with a stench of death, his unbothered expression didn't change. He came out of the passageway and arrived in another vicinity where small structures made from stones could be seen. Finally, a place to rest for the night, Gustav thought as he walked further forward. Chapter 243. He came out of the passageway and arrived in another vicinity where small structures made from the stones could be seen. Finally, a place to rest for the night, Gustav thought as he walked forward. This area was the territory of the mixed breeds he had just slaughtered. There were still a few of them on the inside, but he dealt with them quickly since they were weaker than the ones he had just faced. After he was done, he picked up all the corpses and took them to the passageway, placing all of them together. He thought of using atomic disintegration to make them vanish, but he changed his mind. Any creature that wanders to this area will think twice before coming in once they see the stack of corpses. This was Gustav's thought process as he left them there and went back in. The small structures over here were big enough to size a fully grown human. So Gustav picked one of them on the side and went in. System interface. Gustav internally called for the system interface to open up. Host attributes, skills and abilities, bloodlines, quests, shop, goals, bloodline information, alien life forms, just as mentioned by the system earlier when Gustav finished battling the Kalapasol. Another tab had been created where he was able to store alien forms. Alien life forms. Gustav decided to check on the information regarding the first one he took. Alien life forms, Kalapasol. an alien species from the planet Kilantopia with an elastic outer membrane and the ability to harden the surface of its skin with an element it creates internally called silk. It can also create objects and structure from the element it uses to harden the surface of its skin. Gustav stared at the information and noted it. As it turned out, had also be able to transform into this alien if he willed. This was another hidden source of power he added to his arsenal now. The only thing he wasn't clear about was whether he could level up the power of the alien life forms after acquiring them. He closed the alien life forms window and proceeded to open the shop window. Shop, credits, 59,100, Bloodline items, Bloodline recipes, Bloodline skills, abilities, training manuals. Gustav stared at the number of credits he had accumulated and smirked. Originally, it was around 19,000 he had saved from hunting down mixed breeds within the border. Nevertheless, during the test phases, he had managed to accumulate 40,000 more, bringing everything to a total of 59,000. I can finally buy a bloodline from the system now. A surge of excitement ran through Gustav's body as he thought of this. He had only gotten techniques from the system since he had been accumulating credits, since the number of credits needed for getting a bloodline was quite exorbitant. Gustav recalled when the second time he got a technique was around 6 weeks ago. 6 weeks back, after the closing periods, Maltida found her way to the disciplinary committee's block and headed for Mr. Lon's office. Come, come. She knocked softly, and a masculine voice responded from within. Come in. SHHHSSHH. The door slid towards the side, and she proceeded to walk in. Right in front was an office table with a middle-aged-looking man sitting behind it. Files were stacked on the table, and a holographic monitor, along with a keyboard, was positioned in front of him. He was initially busy with typing something, but he took a pause when Maltida stepped in. Good day, Mr. Lon. You called for me, Maltida said respectfully. Called for you. Mr. Lon stared at her with a confused expression. I didn't, he denied. Mr. Lon, the student who was sent to deliver the message, specifically said you wanted me to see you in your office. What? I didn't send any student on such an errand, Mr. Lon exclaimed. Then how come, Mr. Lon? Or you don't want to admit that you called for me in your secluded office? Maltida voiced out once again. Girl, I did not. Mr. Lon was about to voice out again when he sniffed something. What's that smell? He questioned with a repressed look. What smell, Mr. Lon? Maltida asked with a confused expression. Smells like. Before Mr. Lon could complete his sentence, Maltida interrupted. Is this your way of getting out of your current predicament, Mr. Lon? Why did you call me here? Maltida asked again with a suspicious look on her face. What are you talking about? There's a strange SME. Mr. Lon couldn't complete his statement because suddenly felt a wave of drowsiness. Mr. Lon was trying to hold his breath so as not to inhale whatever was in the air since he sensed that it was the reason for his drowsiness. However, Maltida kept engaging him, throwing accusations back and forth which made him keep talking. Mr. Lon, are you trying to do something to me? Maltida voiced out with a look of fright after noticing that Mr. Lon stood up. No, it's the smell. Mr. Lon had to answer again, causing him to inhale more of the strange smell in the office. Just. I. Mr. Lon's eyes rolled to the back as he fell and slammed his head on the table before sliding to the floor. Maltida's expression that was initially that of fear changed to normal as she walked towards Mr. Lon's table. TCHWW. She sneezed and 2 small circular objects fell out of her nose. The smell in the air was already disappearing. You can come in now, he's unconscious, Maltida voiced out. SHHHSSHH. The door slid to the side and a youngster with dirty blonde hair walked with an unbothered expression. He looked around while walking forward. Maltida was already holding Mr. Lon's unconscious body up. Such foul air. The youngster, who was obviously Gustav, muttered. But it's already cleared, Maltida responded with a contemplative expression. Yeah, but so long as I remain in the same room with that creature, the air will keep on being soiled, Gustav voiced out before spitting out to one side. Oh, we'll have to clean that up. I shouldn't be contaminating the crime scene, Gustav said internally, while staring at his saliva a few feet away. Let's begin, Gustav said to Maltida, who nodded in reply before bringing out a flying camera from her storage device. Remember, whatever happens here is between you and I. If it ever gets leaked out, you're done, and you know what I mean by that, Gustav said with a cold expression. Maltida gulped down saliva and nodded. Gustav transformed into Mr. Lon after wearing his current clothing and tying him up by the side. Mr. Lon was only clad in his underwear at the moment. Maltida's eyes widened as she saw Gustav transform into Mr. Lon. He truly does have the ability to shapeshift. Scary, but I have to do this. It's not Mr. Lon, it's Gustav, she said in her mind. Gustav walked towards Maltida, stretched out his right palm and grabbed her breasts. Her expression at the moment was that of a helpless girl trying to fight against being assaulted. The camera in front recorded as Gustav sexually assaulted Maltida while using Mr. Lon's appearance. If I get enough credits, would it be possible to buy every bloodline in the system? If that's possible, where exactly does the system itself get the bloodlines from? This question plagued Gustav's mind. He wished more than anything to know more about the system, but the system was not the talkative or friendly type. The history of their conversations was proof of that. Hey, system, at least answer me. Tell me something about how you came into existence? Gustav asked internally. However, as expected, there was no reply. The system only responded to him whenever it wanted to. Gustav, too, wasn't the type who liked unnecessary banter and conversations. Still, the system was really leaving him with a lot of questions, so he started devising plans to make the system converse with him. Smirk. We shall see, Gustav said internally. Nighttime came in the Kaskia ruins, and the participants stopped moving about after finding places to rest for the night. Since groups had been formed, the participants took turns to patrol their sleeping environment during the nighttime. Just in case they were attacked, whoever was patrolling during that time would alert the rest that was asleep. Just like that, a night went by, and the next morning the participants were on the move once again. Even though the participants were numbered in thousands, they had not yet journeyed to every part of the ruins. There were still a lot of unexplored parts of the ruins that the participants hadn't gotten to. At the moment, lots of participants had managed to get one or more stones and were interested in gathering even more. A few groups still hadn't been able to collect a single stone because each territory they visited happened to be places where powerful creatures they weren't powerful enough to handle resided in. Only a few powerful participants were traveling on their own. These participants felt below them to join groups and wanted to be untethered and free from any form of burden. Glade, Timi, Ria, Ee, and the girl Gustav met on the stairs happened to be among the participants that moved on their own. Gustav had already woken up quite early as usual, and he wandered out of his sleeping area. Even when he was asleep during the night, his perception was still subconsciously spread out, so he would sense movements around him and wake up if something was amiss. Gustav brought out the grand stones in his possession. He counted them after acquiring a few more from a group of mixed breeds territory. 17. I need to acquire more. Chapter 245. Gustav brought out the grand stones in his possession. He counted them after acquiring a few more from a group of mixed breeds territory. 17. I need to acquire more, Gustav said internally as he walked within a passageway. Clash! Bam! Bang! Clang! He suddenly sensed a battle up ahead. Since it was pretty far from the current position, the sounds of a collision were practically inexistent. However, Gustav was able to pick up on them due to his perceptive abilities. God Eyes has been activated. Gustav activated God Eyes and instantly zoomed in on the location, which was thousands of feet away. After the passageway that Gustav was currently in, there was a small space that had 6 passageways leading to different places. Within the second passageway was where this battle was ongoing. Oh. Finally meeting some, Gustav noticed that this group happened to be battling with many mixed bloods putting on red. This red outfit was the same he found on the humanoid-looking aliens, which signified that they were inmates. Those aliens that were supermassive in size wouldn't have this outfit on. Gustav noticed that the number of the participants' group compared to that of the inmates was more, yet they were losing the battle. There were only 4 inmates battling a group of 6. 2 of the participants in the group were battling the supposed leader of the 4 inmates, while the rest battled one-on-one. Key. Brother, what are we going to do with these kids after we've dealt with them? One of them, who had water running down his entire body, spoke as he leaped backward, dodging the slash of the youngster in front of him. What else? We're going to have fun with them, of course. Look at these fresh melons. The inmate who replied was currently battling 2 participants. Yet he was able to strike a conversation with ease. The participants' group consisted of 2 girls and 4 boys. When they heard the conversation between the inmates, the girls felt uncomfortable, and it affected their fighting capacity a bit. They were reminded that these were hardened, mixed-blood criminals who must have been sentenced here for committing heinous crimes. The boys were incensed and pushed themselves to fight better so nothing would happen to their teammates. While watching from afar, Gustav could already tell what the problem was. The group was inexperienced with battle. They may have trained in combat and sparred, but when it comes to real-life battles where they'd have to fight other people, and their lives depended on it, they were inexperienced. Gustav could see that the inmates weren't much stronger than the participants' group when it came to power levels. However, due to the group's lack of experience, they were losing. Gustav also noticed that only 2 from the participants' group were battling with the intent to kill. He could see that in their strikes and attacks. The rest were subconsciously hesitating due to not having killed a person before. So, their attacks were aimed towards causing injury than killing. Grab! The inmate battling 2 people suddenly made his arms grow larger and grabbed onto the neck of the participant on the right, while kicking the one on the left in the guts. Bang! His body traveled across the air and slammed into the wall, while the other one that was grabbed happened to be a girl. Now I got one, the inmate voiced out. The girl tried using her bloodline, which gave her superhuman strength to free herself from his grip. Still, his arms enlarged even more and covered her entire body as he held her in front of himself. Brother got himself one already. Time to get mine. One of them shouted out from the side. Laura! The boy who was kicked earlier on shouted out as big icicles started protruding from his body. Don't come any closer or she's... While the inmate was speaking, he suddenly sensed something from the left where the entrance of the passageway was located. Swish! A gust of breeze blew past them, and the next thing that happened was bang! A heavy sound of collision rang out, and the lead inmate was sent flying towards the side with half of his face covered in blood and multiple teeth flying out of his mouth. Everyone looked behind the girl that was held earlier on and noticed a male youngster with dirty blonde hair standing in place with his left arm outstretched. He slowly brought down his fist in a cool manner and stared at the rest. The girl who had fallen to the ground after being released from the inmates' grip turned her head to stare at Gustav's face. Her face brightened up as her eyes sparkled with delight. Beautiful, she said internally. Gustav stretched out his hand towards her. She reached out and grabbed it, and he proceeded to pull her up. I want you and your group to leave. This was the first statement she heard from him. She was surprised by his sudden statement. What do you mean, leave? She asked, but Gustav didn't wait to answer. He dashed towards the side and pushed the girl away, dodging an attack from one of the inmates in front. "Just go, swish!" She only heard his voice, but his figure had already disappeared from her front. The person who had shot out an energy beam from his hand was battling the second girl in the group. He had attacked him because they all paused their battle after Gustav sent their leader flying with a punch. Swish! Gustav arrived in front of him and threw out his fist towards the chest of the inmate. His arm transformed into that of the mutated bull as it traveled forward. Still, the instant it was about to make contact, green energy suddenly blasted from the inmate's body. It was practically at point-blank range, so Gustav was unable to dodge. However, he didn't slow down his attack. Gustav's fist still slammed into the chest, but he also received the full brunt of the energy attack. Chapter 246. Gustav's fist still slammed into the inmate's chest, but he also received the full brunt of the energy attack. Bang! Bang! Both of them were blasted backward, and cracking sounds rang out. Gustav landed on his feet about 70 feet away from his initial position. He slid backward for a few seconds while the other inmate slammed onto the ground with his back and a broken sternum. He spat out blood and repeatedly coughed before passing out. Gustav was back at his former position after taking that attack. "You're bleeding." The girl who Gustav saved earlier shouted out after noticing the palm-sized hole in Gustav's left shoulder area. "I'm fine," Gustav voiced out as blood rolled down his arm. "These ones are truly experienced. Unlike the opponents I have been facing in the past," Gustav said internally as he stared at his shoulder injury. Even though that inmate was weaker, he still managed to injure Gustav. Before the girl could speak another word, Gustav had already dashed forward to engage the remaining inmates. The rest of the inmates, just like their companions, were also unable to properly follow Gustav's speed. This was a resultant effect of their bloodline abilities getting weakened before being thrown into Kaskia ruins. However, due to their previous battle experiences, they were still able to put up a little bit of fight. Gustav, knowing that he had been careless earlier on and was getting too cocky due to his easy wins in the past, changed his viewpoint. He decided that he would handle future battles with caution from now on. In a few, the remaining 2 inmates were taken down by Gustav while the group he saved just watched from the side. They wanted to assist him when he was engaging the inmates previously, but not only were they awed by his movements, they also couldn't properly follow his speed, so they didn't know how to attack. "You're still here?" Gustav questioned from up front where he was standing in front of the last inmate he took down. The group was brought out of their reverie and started thanking Gustav for his help. Gustav just nodded and asked them to leave once again. "Why don't you join our group?" "Well, let you be the leader," the girl with superhuman strength proposed. "Hey, Laura, leading is not only based on strength." The other guy fighting beside her was not in favor of the idea. "If it is based on weakness, why weren't you able to defeat those inmates yourself?" Laura asked with a tone of ridicule. The guy felt ashamed and was about to retort when Gustav replied, "Not interested." After saying that, Gustav went to grab the bodies of the inmates and stack them together in a particular place. "Why are you dragging them around like they are dead?" The other girl in the group, who had a binocular on her right eye, asked. "Because I am going to kill them," Gustav replied while squatting. The entire group was shocked by Gustav's calmness when he mentioned killing the inmates. He sounded like taking the life of others was just a casual thing to do. Even though these were inmates, some of them still felt Gustav shouldn't kill them. "Dash, we should give them a chance." "Dash, they're serving their term already." 2 guys from the group voiced out together. "I also don't think you should kill them," the girl with binoculars said. "A team of dorks." "No wonder they say birds of the same feathers flock together," Gustav said internally. "They're serving their term, but did staying in here change them? Have you forgotten what they were going to do to you?" Gustav asked the girl in binocular, who shivered slightly the moment Gustav posed that question. Also, if you think you can stop me from killing them, you're free to come and try. Gustav's fingers increased in length as his right hand transformed into that of the Bloodwolf's. The ones who didn't want him to kill the inmates could only watch as Gustav squatted and his claws dug into the neck of the leader of this group of inmates. Blood trickled down the neck of the inmate as a system notification appeared in Gustav's line of sight. Requirement for bloodline acquisition has been met. Analyzing host compatibility with muscle enlargement, bloodline 0% per 100%. Analysis complete, 84%/100%. Host compatibility with muscle enlargement bloodline is 89%. Does the host desire to acquire this bloodline? Yes/no. I won't leave any loopholes behind, Gustav said internally before proceeding to say yes to the bloodline acquisition. The main reason why Gustav wanted them dead was to make sure he didn't leave any room for suspicions after taking their bloodlines. Even though he could acquire their bloodlines without killing them, it would be suspicious that they were moving around without using their abilities after he defeated them. The group was unable to stand there and keep on watching as Gustav slit the throat of each inmate after acquiring their bloodline. Those who were against it started puking the moment they saw Gustav brutally slit the throat of the first inmate. The girl who Gustav saved first came over to thank him again before their team left the passageway. After Gustav acquired the 4 bloodlines, he stood up and proceeded to walk forward. With these, I should be able to perform more experiments with recreation. Gustav smiled like a maniac as he moved forward. He had wanted to try out recreation since that time, but he was unable to do so because he didn't want to make use of the 4 he had earlier. He didn't see anything special in these 4 bloodlines, so even if they lost their original properties after recreation, he wouldn't be bothered. I need to find more mixed blood inmates. While I'm looking for the stones, Gustav brought out his map and scanned through. The Arcanades didn't map out places where mixed blood inmates could be located. So, Gustav was trying to use the structure of the areas shown to depict places where these mixed bloods might be positioned. Gustav remembered what the last inmate said while he was taking his bloodline. You're all gonna die. Even though we didn't get you lots, the silhouette will. He has been freed. Gustav didn't care about all that and still killed him afterwards since he didn't have the time to torture him to get answers. However, Gustav still wondered, what did he mean? Silhouette. Chapter 247. Gustav didn't care about all that and still killed him afterwards since he didn't have the time to torture him to get answers. However, Gustav still wondered, what did he mean? Silhouette. Gustav started his journey to the places he marked on the map. His plan at the moment was not only to acquire different bloodlines from inmates, but also gather enough grandstones. After that, he decided that he would find a safe place to hide and rest for 2 days while using recreation. In another part of the ruins, Glade and Maltida met up by coincidence and started journeying together. They had gathered a particular number of stones together and split them equally. They reached a certain part of the ruins together after dealing with a bunch of mixed breeds. According to the map, the end of the pathway that led them there was supposed to lead to another place. However, they met with a dead end. There was a large rocky wall in front of them. Still, within this large wall that covered their entire line of sight, there was a large opening where a rocky, square-shaped boulder sat. The color of this boulder was whiter than that of the wall, so it stood out in that particular spot. The boulder was square-shaped. The 2 girls stared at the wall before them with a confused expression. There was supposed to be a path here. How could the MBO give us a wrong map? Glade said with a tone of confoundment. I don't know, but I feel like there's something strange about this place, Maltida said while looking around. Of course, it's bloody weird. There's a dead end where there's supposed to be a road, Glade said while rolling her eyes before walking forward towards the wall. Glade, I think we should leave. There's no point in staying here if there's no path. Maltida could not help but feel a certain kind of eeriness creeping down her spine. Yeah, we should leave. What's this? Glade noticed the rock in the middle of the opening on the wall and walked towards it. Glade, let's. Hold on. What's this weird-looking rock? Glade could see engravings and weird, runic-like drawings across the body of the rock as she moved closer to it. She felt something weird coming from the rock, which made her intrigued. Glade started reaching out her hand to touch the weird rock. Glade, let's go. This place is... Theirs. I don't know. It just doesn't feel... Glade fingers paused inches away from making contact with the rock after she heard Maltida's statement. All right, Grandma, so baggy. Let's go. Glade gave in and retracted her hand. All right, let's get out of here, Glade said while turning around. Still, the moment she saw Maltida's eyes widening in astonishment, she felt something wasn't right. There's no need to go anywhere. Children. She heard a deep, monotonous, masculine voice from behind that sounded loud and echoed across the place. Sheeing. Glade quickly turned around to look and noticed that the rock inside the hole had two wide open, large eyes that glowed purple. Each eye was comparable to the size of a human head. But that wasn't the problem now. The problem was, Glade found herself unable to move the moment she locked eyes with that of the rock. Kneel. Bam. Bam. It turned out that she wasn't the only one who could not control her body movement because she and Maltida fell to their knees the moment that word was uttered. Fear crept down their spines and dug deep into their hearts and souls as the eyes stared at them. They tried everything in their power to move, but it was futile. You too shall now become my minions like the others before you. You shall do my bidding in order to free me from this accursed hole. Just like that, 7 hours had gone by, and in these 7 hours, Gustav had made progress with hunting the inmates. He had met 2 hordes of them while moving about. Unfortunately, one of the groups he met had just finished decimating an entire team of mixed blood participants. Gustav, of course, didn't spare a single one of them, and, unlike before, he didn't engage them carelessly. Since he noticed them before they did him, he pulled them into a deathly trap to reduce their numbers before engaging them. Gustav would look for areas with concentrated energy, which originated from the initial energy stones that used to be here. He knew that there would be lesser hidden cameras in places like this because they won't be able to function properly. Gustav reckoned that most of these groups that fell to the inmates were being too greedy. The inmates never went too far beyond places where they resided, so these groups could have still escaped if they wanted to. Sadly, they tried biting off more than they could chew. There were some grandstones in that location, which was what clouded their reasoning. The MBO had mentioned that this was supposed to be a survival test phase, which meant surviving here for 4 days was the main goal while the gathering of grandstones was secondary. However, most of the mixed blood participants had made surviving secondary and gathering of grandstones primary. Gustav didn't feel pity for such parties because he felt that participants that had gotten this far should be able to use their brains and run for their lives when they came into contact with opponents they couldn't defeat. At the moment, Gustav had acquired 8 more bloodlines and 4 more grandstones, increasing the total count to 21. His plan was to gather up to 30 before finding a good place to hole up for the next 2 days, since he had acquired enough bloodlines for recreation purpose. Since his 7 hours journey, he had gotten more information on the silhouette. He found out that even the inmates feared it, since it used to feed on them before it was sealed. However, now it was freed, and Gustav could guess that it was the doing of the MBO. Well, as long as it doesn't affect me. Why should I care? Gustav threw it to the back of his mind as he continued his journey. Chapter 248. Well, so long as it doesn't affect me. Why should I care? Gustav threw it to the back of his mind as he continued his journey. Good thing that killing mixed bloods now gives me EXP. I don't have to bother hunting down only mixed breeds. In another part of the ruins, a group of 6 moved about the place frantically. Jean! Jean, where the hell are you? Jean! How did she just disappear like that? It's been almost 10 hours. How are we supposed to find her, Angie? The group seemed to be looking for someone. Angie was among them. She paused her steps after dashing across the place repeatedly. We have to retrace our steps, Angie muttered. We'll have to go back to the area we spent the night, Angie proposed. The other teammates nodded in agreement and started turning around. The male participants with white dreadlocks in the group looked around the passageway with caution. Rumors had been spreading around about a silhouette. He whispered softly into Angie's ear. I also heard about it. While looking around the place, I questioned a few of the groups I met, and they said we should leave this area as soon as possible. Angie whispered back. Then we shouldn't be going back, should we? The boy asked with a confounded expression. Don't tell the others. We must find her first before leaving this area, Angie said before proceeding to move forward. The participants behind sighed before proceeding to also move forward. After they had all gone, a silhouette phased out of the wall on the left. Slurp, slurp, hee. To find her means you must find me since. She's already within me. Ha ha ha. The silhouette laughed while rubbing its belly area. You have killed a serial ranked mixed blood, plus 15, 000 EXP. You have killed a serial ranked mixed blood, plus 15, 000 EXP. Gustav was at it again, slaughtering a bunch of inmates that were going against a combination of several groups. This clash was like an ongoing war. Around 50 participants were gathered here battling against these inmates that were over 40 in number. Gustav just happened to meet them while wandering about. To the groups of participants, it felt like he was helping them. However, Gustav was only doing this for his own selfish gains. The crowd was a good cover-up for him to perform his deeds. Gustav noticed that among all the inmates he had slaughtered, none of them surpassed the serial rank. He knew this wasn't their original strength since, according to the briefing, these criminals were weakened before thrown into this place. He figured the criminals being sent here were all probably on the same level of strength, which brought him to the conclusion that the government only had the power to reduce the strength of criminals to a particular level. This meant there were other prisons with more powerful criminals who would be beyond the serial ranked level even after they had been weakened. Gustav used his claws to decapitate another mixed blood criminal, causing their numbers to reduce to around 7. At this moment, the mixed blood inmates were started to pull back. They stared at the participants in fear. To be more accurate, they were staring at Gustav in that manner since he had slaughtered a bunch of them single-handedly. Just who is that kid, and why is his strength way higher than the rest? This was the thought of the inmates as they pulled back. There were a lot of strong participants in the combination of groups, but they noticed that Gustav stood out more. This is not just because of the way he fought or his strength, but because he never hesitated when striking a deathly blow. Unlike the others who seemed inexperienced, he was like a pro. No emotions showed on his face when striking down an opponent. Within the building that was a few kilometers from the barricade surrounding the Kaskia ruins, leaders of the MBO from different parts of the world gathered around a table. They seemed to be having an argument as they watched the footages being displayed in a holographic form above the table. Chatter, chatter, chatter. He's bloody ruthless. Like an emotionless killing machine. Where did this young beast come from? Remember he's not the only one. That girl has also proven to be a psychopath. The other green-haired boy still seemed pretty okay. But these two, the blonde boy and the indigo-haired girl, must be real psychopaths. Even if they pass, I suggest they undergo a mental evaluation. Kids their age aren't supposed to be like this. The officials voiced their concerns and suggestions as they watched different locations in the Kaskia ruins being displayed in the holographic projections. They seemed to be mostly focused on the projection where lots of inmates were being slaughtered by the participants. Gustav could be seen casually tearing limbs and heads apart as he moved across the battle area, like a reaper. One of the officers in the room, dressed in a more and obviously dignified outfit than the rest, raised his left palm. Silence. The room immediately became silent. We should be celebrating that we have gotten such talented youngsters to participate in the test, he started speaking. So why is it that you lots seem quite dissatisfied? He asked. Silence. These youngsters, if groomed properly, will become the next generation of future leaders of the MBO and lead Earth to achieve more glorious deeds. They even have the ability to surpass the present generation. So I ask again, why do you lots complain? The room remained silent once again for a few seconds before a person positioned on the south of the table raised his hand. If I may say, Great Commander Cheyenne. He voiced out, You may speak, young Joe. The man hailed as Great Commander Cheyenne gave the go-ahead. The other commanders aren't alarmed for no good reason. Young Joe started speaking. Everyone listened attentively to young Joe's speech. Looking at these two mentioned, particularly the blonde youngster, don't you find it abnormal that they can perform such deeds without the slightest bit of hesitation? Just how much would kids of their age be groomed and trained to be able to achieve such state of mind on the battlefield? Everyone still waited to see what Hung Zhou was getting at. The worries of the commanders aren't unfounded because this blonde youngster was trained by someone that you all consider dangerous, young Zhou stated. Mutter, mutter, mutter. And who may that be? Great Commander Cheyenne asked the same questions on everyone's mind. It is none other than the one known as the Demon Queen. Young Mistress Amy. Immediately Hung Zhou revealed this. The entire room went silent again as the official's expression were that of disbelief. A strange tension suddenly filled the air as everyone stared at Gustav on the projection again. Are you sure about this, young Zhou? Great Commander Cheyenne voiced out. Bang! Gustav finally took care of the last inmate by smashing his skull with his feet after taking his bloodline. That makes it a total of 23. Gustav calculated the number of bloodlines he had taken so far. Hey, I finally caught up to you. A young female voice was heard coming from the passageway up ahead. Gustav stared at the short, cute, but violent-looking girl with indigo-colored hair that had just arrived. Sigh. Chapter 249. Gustav stared at the short, cute, but violent-looking girl with indigo-colored hair that had just arrived. Sigh. This happened to be the same girl he jumped over at the stairway leading to the ruins. Gustav could tell that she would be a nuisance. Now, I've caught up to you, she voiced out while laughing. Gustav stared at her like she was retarded. She had been trying to catch up with him since the beginning, just like the participants that started a fight so they could be the first to reach the bottom of the stairway. Well, now that you've caught up to me, what's next? Gustav asked as another sigh escaped his lips. The girl's face instantly froze up after hearing that. What's next? She muttered with a low tone. For several seconds, she stood in place with a contemplative look, unable to say a word in response to Gustav's question. Gustav only shook his head and started moving towards the other passageway. Some of the participants in the vicinity that took part in dealing with the inmates earlier walked up to Gustav and asked for him to be a part of their team. However, Gustav refused all of them as usual and kept on walking towards the other passageway. Hey! He heard a shout from behind and already figured out that it was the same indigo-haired girl. What is it? Gustav asked while pausing his footsteps. Let us compare the number of stones we have gathered, the girl proposed. Gustav turned around to stare at her. Her body size must be equal to her brain. Immature in every way, Gustav could sense the zeal to be the best within her. This girl wanted to be better than everyone. It would seem she derived joy in knowing and showing that she was the best. Gustav guessed that she must have been above everyone else in her life throughout her lifetime, which gave her a kind of zeal to dominate others. "Idiot!" Gustav voiced out and turned around to keep walking. "Hey, hold it right there." Swish! Before she could complete her sentence, Gustav had dashed off into the distance. That. She pointed in the direction Gustav dashed off into with a look of anguish. "What are you looking at?" She shouted out at the participants behind before also dashing forward. Some of them flinched backwards in fear. These participants recognized her due to the fact that she had become quite popular when she decapitated the mixed breed they met at the stairway. They knew better than to mess with her. Some of them that witnessed her brutality couldn't tell who was stronger between her and Gustav. What made her even more mysterious and scary was the fact that they couldn't figure out her bloodline ability, unlike Gustav, who they had seen transforming. Swish! Gustav passed through different passageways as he dashed across the ruins. It was already nighttime, so he was heading back to a particular location that he had decided to sleep in for the night. Not only would he sleep in here for the night, but he had also decided to stay cooped up in there for the next 2 days. After running for about 20 minutes, Gustav arrived in a sloppy area. This area wasn't like the others. Moving on it was like going down a mountain slope. The difference was it wasn't as sloppy as that of a mountain. SHHHSSHH. Gustav paused his running and slid a few feet forward before stopping in front of a wide hole. PRRKK. PRRKK. Stones rolled down from his feet position into the wide hole. Any little sound echoed due to the silence of the place. The hole was so wide that it covered the entire area. There was no way he could keep going forward, since it was like a dead end. A person would have to go back and look for another route if they wanted to get to the other end of the hole. It was so wide that it covered a radius of over 2,000 feet. The depth couldn't be seen, since it was also very deep. From the view above, Gustav was like a dot compared to the size of this wide hole. Gustav squatted slightly before jumping into the hole. Swish! His body descended rapidly into the dark hole. God eyes have been activated. Gustav activated God eyes and looked down as he fell across the air. He could see the dark hole clearly as he fell. The bottom was too far down for God eyes to see, but the surroundings were visible. Rocks protruded from the sides of the wide hole in different areas. Some had plants growing on them, while others just looked normal. Some places had small holes. Gustav had been descending for about 30 seconds now, and he had descended more than 5,000 feet. He still kept descending without the intention of doing anything about it. It looked as if he was falling to his death. Swish! 6,000 feet, 7,000 feet, 8,000 feet. The moment he crossed 9,000 feet, Gustav activated an ability. Size manipulation has been activated. His body started increasing in length as he closed in on a particular hole in the wall about 600 feet below, towards his left. Swish! Gustav's body length continued increasing in size as he descended to that particular point. He was now the size of 2 trucks stacked upon one another. The instant Gustav's body descended to the height of the hole towards his left, he stretched out his left hand with intense speed. Clench! His hand reached out and grabbed the edge of the hole in the wall. Gustav's body stopped dropping at this point since he was holding his body weight up. He deactivated size manipulation and returned back to his original size before climbing up into the hole. Unlike the other holes within the walls of this place, this particular one was large enough. It was practically like a room due to its size. Gustav looked around. Only grasses growing out of the floor and rough, rock-like looking edges could be seen. The ceiling was also high enough. Gustav brought out a cube from his backpack and tapped on it. Zroyanin. It unfolded and transformed into a tent-like house.